What if Izuku Midoriya was actually the reincarnation of Julius Novachrono, the most powerful wizard king who could control time itself? Picture this, a 4-year-old boy surrounded by dangerous villains, suddenly awakening memories of his past life and shouting, "Chrono, Stasis, Grigora," with such devastating power that he freezes every single enemy in place, stealing their life force to fuel his own incredible abilities. This is the story of how Deku became the ultimate time-manipulating hero who would reshape the entire world.
Welcome, Legends, to Chronos Recom. I wrote this story myself, so if you have any suggestions or what-ifs you want to see, drop it in the comments below. Also, just wanted to let you know I've got a Patreon set up now for anyone who wants to support the channel directly. You can get early access to stories, submit direct fan requests, and get exclusive content. It's totally optional, but if you want to help keep these stories coming, check it out. Links in the description. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that bell so you never miss an upload. Let's dive into this story.
The attack came without warning. Aldera Elementary School had been a typical institution on a typical day when the villains struck. 4 masked individuals with devastating quirks, one who could create explosions, another who manipulated concrete, a third who generated acid, and their leader who could amplify the quirks of others, had taken the entire school hostage. Their demands were simple: 10 million yen and safe passage out of Japan, or they would start executing children. 4-year-old Izuku Midoriya sat among his terrified classmates. The children huddled together in the gymnasium as the villains paced before them. The teachers had been restrained along the wall, helpless. One of the villains, his face covered by a skull mask, approached the children with a sadistic grin. "Maybe we should show them we're serious," he suggested to his leader. "Pick one kid as an example." The leader nodded, and the skull-masked villain scanned the crowd, his eyes settling on a small girl with pigtails who was sobbing uncontrollably. "That one. She's annoying me." As he reached for the girl, something inexplicable happened within Izuku Midoriya. A sensation like lightning coursed through his small body, memories flooding into his consciousness. Memories that weren't his own, yet somehow were. Memories of battles, of a kingdom called Clover, of magic, and of being a man named Julius Novachrono. The villain's hand was inches from the girl when Izuku stood up, his green eyes suddenly glowing with golden light. "You will not harm her," he said, his voice carrying an authority that no 4-year-old should possess. The villain turned, amused. "Oh, and what are you going to do about it, kid?" Izuku raised his hand, a strange golden mark appearing on the back of it. Knowledge and power surged through him as he shouted words that came instinctively. "Chrono, Stasis, Grigora." Golden light erupted from Izuku's small body, expanding outward in concentric circles that passed through the hostages harmlessly but froze each villain in place the moment they made contact. The air around the attackers shimmered with arcane symbols as they were completely immobilized in glowing amber-like time capsules. The gym fell silent as children and teachers stared in disbelief. Izuku stood with his hand extended, eyes aglow with power, before the sudden exertion overwhelmed his young body. The golden light faded, and he collapsed unconscious to the floor. By the time the pro heroes arrived, they found 4 villains suspended in what appeared to be some form of time stasis, completely immobile, and a small green-haired boy being attended to by awestruck teachers. That day marked the emergence of what would later be classified as the most powerful time manipulation quirk ever recorded, and the beginning of Izuku Midoriya's journey to becoming a legend. Izuku Midoriya walked toward UA high school with measured steps, drawing glances from other examinees. At 15, he had grown into a confident young man, his green hair styled neatly, his posture straight and assured. The whispers followed him as they always did. "That's him, the timekeeper. The kid who froze those villains when he was 4. I heard he can stop time completely. They say All Might personally recommended him." Izuku smiled to himself. The years since his quirk had manifested had been interesting, to say the least. The memories of his past life as Julius Novachrono had integrated with his current existence, creating a unique duality. He possessed the knowledge and experience of a former wizard king alongside the wonder and enthusiasm of youth. His power had only grown since that first awakening. After the elementary school incident, he'd been immediately registered with a quirk called chronokinesis. Though Izuku knew it wasn't truly a quirk, but magic from another world, somehow carried through reincarnation. The government had assigned him special trainers and monitors, both to help him develop his abilities and to ensure he didn't pose a threat to society. What they discovered was that Izuku's power continued to grow with each passing year. By age 10, he could manipulate time in localized fields. By 12, he could accelerate, decelerate, or completely stop time for specific targets. By 14, he could reverse time for injured individuals, healing them by returning their bodies to previous states. And with each significant villain he encountered, because they did come, drawn to the fame of the child with the time quirk, Izuku discovered he could absorb portions of their lifespan, storing it as magical power, just as he had done as Julius. Midoriya, a voice called out, breaking his reverie. Izuku turned to see a familiar face, Katsuki Bakugo, his childhood acquaintance. Their relationship had been complicated by Izuku's sudden rise to fame. Where once Bakugo might have been the dominant personality in their friendship, Izuku's confidence and power had shifted that dynamic considerably. Bakugo, Izuku greeted with a genuine smile. Ready for the entrance exam? Bakugo scowled. Don't act so familiar. Just because you've got that flashy quirk doesn't mean you'll beat me today. Izuku chuckled, the sound reminiscent of a much older man. I look forward to seeing what you can do. Your explosion quirk has always fascinated me. The chemical reactions involved in creating such controlled detonations are quite remarkable. This was another aspect of his dual nature. Julius's endless fascination with magical abilities had translated to an intense curiosity about quirks in this life. Bakugo seemed taken aback by Izuku's response, expecting anger or intimidation rather than genuine interest. Before he could reply, an announcement called all examinees to the auditorium. The written portion of the exam posed no challenge for Izuku. With the knowledge of a man who had led a kingdom and mastered complex magical theory, academic tests were trivial. He completed it in half the allotted time, then sat back and observed his fellow examinees with interest. When Present Mike explained the practical portion, defeating robot opponents in an urban setting, Izuku couldn't help but smile. Such a test would be child's play for someone who could manipulate time. As the examinees were transported to the testing grounds, Izuku found himself assigned to Ground Beta. He stood at the starting line, loosening his limbs, aware of the eyes on him. Many of the other examinees were keeping their distance, having heard of his reputation. Begin! Present Mike's voice suddenly boomed, catching many off guard, but not Izuku. While others hesitated, Izuku strode forward calmly as the massive gates opened. 3 one-point robots immediately charged toward him, their mechanical limbs whirring. Fascinating design, Izuku commented, raising his hand casually. Chronostasis. Golden light flashed from his palm, and all 3 robots froze in place, suspended in time. Izuku walked past them, placing his hand on each one in turn. As he touched them, the robots seemed to age rapidly, their metal corroding, circuits failing, until they collapsed into heaps of rusted parts. Time acceleration, he explained to no one in particular, advancing their timeline by approximately 50 years. He continued through the testing ground at a leisurely pace. When a 2-pointer lunged at him from behind a building, Izuku didn't even turn around. The air around him shimmered with golden light, and the robot slowed to a crawl, moving so slowly it appeared nearly stationary. Time dilation field, Izuku commented, finally turning to examine the robot. The area around me experiences time at 1/100th the normal rate. With a flick of his wrist, he condensed the field around just the robot, then accelerated its personal time stream until it rusted away like the others. Other examinees who happened to witness these displays stood slack-jawed. This wasn't just power. It was absolute control over a fundamental force of nature. When a 3-pointer crashed through a building and charged at a group of stunned examinees, Izuku appeared between them in an instant. Not teleportation, but a personal acceleration of his time stream that made him move faster than the human eye could track. Chronostasis, he announced, freezing the massive robot mid-charge. Then, with a more concentrated gesture, time absorption. Golden lights surrounded the robot as Izuku literally stole time from the machine, converting its potential energy and operational lifespan into magical power that he stored within himself. The robot collapsed, completely drained of energy. By the 15-minute mark, Izuku had accumulated over 70 points without breaking a sweat. He stood atop a small building, surveying the testing ground with interest, watching other examinees showcase their quirks. "Wonderful," he murmured. "So many fascinating abilities." That's when the earth began to shake. Buildings crumbled as the Zero Pointer, a colossal robot the size of a skyscraper, emerged at the center of the testing ground. Examinees fled in terror as it began to advance, crushing everything in its path. Izuku observed it with childlike wonder. Now that's quite impressive engineering. He noticed a girl trapped beneath rubble in the Zero Pointer's path. Without hesitation, he accelerated his personal time stream, appearing beside her instantaneously. "Allow me to assist," he said, placing a hand on the rubble. "Time reversal." The debris glowed golden as it rewound back into its original position as part of the building, freeing the girl. She stared up at him in amazement. "Thank you," she managed. "You're welcome," Izuku replied. "Now, if you'll excuse me." He turned toward the advancing Zero Pointer, which was now mere meters away. Raising both hands, Izuku called upon a fraction of his stored power, Chrono-Anastasis. A massive wave of golden energy erupted from his body, expanding outward to engulf the Zero Pointer. Within the field, time began to reverse. The colossal robot's movements rewound. It stepped backward, its broken parts reassembled, and it retreated back into the ground as if the film of reality were being played in reverse. In moments, it was gone, returned to its starting position underground before it had ever emerged. The testing ground fell silent as examinees and hidden proctors alike stared in disbelief. Izuku simply dusted off his hands and turned to check on the girl he had rescued. "Are you injured?" he asked. "No," she stammered. "What did you just do?" "I reversed the Zero Pointer's timeline," Izuku explained casually. "It's back where it started before being deployed." In the monitoring room, the UA faculty sat in stunned silence as they watched the footage. "Did he just undo the Zero Pointer?" Present Mike asked. Principal Nezu nodded. "Complete time reversal on an object of that size, without apparent strain." All Might in his deflated form leaned forward. "Young Midoriya's control has improved significantly since I last saw him. To think he's progressed this far." Aizawa Shota, better known as the hero Eraserhead, frowned. "This level of power in a first-year student is unprecedented. Even with his history, I didn't expect this degree of control." "His rescue points are also considerable," Midnight noted. "He saved at least 3 examinees during the test." Nezu steepled his paws. "Gentlemen, ladies, I believe we're looking at perhaps the most powerful student ever to enter UA." Class 1A buzzed with excitement on their first day. Students compared notes on the entrance exam while speculating about their teacher and curriculum. The chatter died instantly when the door slid open, revealing Izuku Midoriya. His entrance wasn't dramatic, he simply walked in with calm confidence, but his reputation preceded him. Every student recognized him immediately. "It's really him," whispered a girl with earphone jacks dangling from her earlobes. The timekeeper, a boy with spiky red hair, murmured in awe. Izuku smiled at his classmates. "Good morning, everyone. I'm looking forward to working with you all." He took a seat near the window, immediately approached by several curious students. "Is it true you reversed a whole villain attack when you were 4? Asked the red-haired boy, who introduced himself as Eijiro Kirishima. "Not exactly reversed," Izuku clarified. "I suspended the villains in time stasis. The difference is significant. One alters the past, the other halts the present." A girl with pink skin and horns, Mina Ashido, leaned forward excitedly. "Can you really see the future?" Izuku's eyes twinkled with amusement. "In a limited fashion, I can glimpse potential time streams, though they're not guaranteed outcomes." Before more questions could be asked, the classroom door slid open again. This time, a man in a yellow sleeping bag wriggled in, drawing confused stares from everyone except Izuku, who observed with interest. "It took you 8 seconds to quiet down," said the man, emerging from his sleeping bag to reveal himself as pro-hero Eraserhead. "Time is a precious resource. Don't waste it. His eyes landed on Izuku. Some of you understand that better than others, it seems. Aizawa quickly distributed PE uniforms and led the class to the training grounds for a quirk assessment test. As he explained the exercise, Bakugo was selected to demonstrate the softball throw. Using your quirk, Aizawa instructed, throw the ball as far as you can. Bakugo wound up and launched the ball with an explosive propulsion. Die! He shouted as the ball soared. 705.2 meters, Aizawa announced, showing the class the distance on his device. Excited chatter broke out among the students until Aizawa silenced them with a stern look. Midoriya, you're next. Izuku stepped forward, accepting the softball with a polite nod. The class fell silent, eager to see the timekeeper in action. May I use my full capabilities? Izuku asked. Aizawa raised an eyebrow. This is an assessment of your potential. Don't hold back. Izuku nodded, holding the ball loosely in his palm. Golden light began to shimmer around it as he focused. Time has fascinating properties when properly manipulated, he explained to the class. For instance, when I accelerate an object's time state while simultaneously removing all friction from its timeline. He made a gentle throwing motion. The ball left his hand surrounded by golden light, then seemed to vanish completely. Aizawa's device beeped repeatedly before displaying, "Tss." The ball is now moving in an endless time loop, Izuku explained. Technically, it will continue traveling forever, as I've removed the possibility of deceleration from its timeline. The class stared in stunned silence. Even Aizawa seemed momentarily speechless, before recovering his composure. Impressive, he conceded. But perhaps impractical for this exercise. Can you retrieve the ball? Of course. Izuku raised his hand and golden light flashed in the distance. The ball reappeared in his palm. I simply reversed its timeline to return it to its starting point. The assessment continued with various physical tests, each one demonstrating a different aspect of Izuku's time manipulation. For the grip strength test, he accelerated the strength of his muscles momentarily. For the standing long jump, he created a time dilation field that effectively allowed him to leap in low gravity. For the endurance running, he simply created a localized loop of time around himself, running effectively forever without tiring. Throughout it all, he maintained an air of scholarly interest, often explaining the theoretical aspects of his techniques to fascinated classmates. When the assessments concluded, Aizawa displayed the rankings. Izuku stood at the top by a considerable margin, with Momo Yaoyorozu and Shoto Todoroki following in second and third. By the way, Aizawa said, the expulsion threat was a logical ruse to draw out your full potential. Most students reacted with shock or relief, but Izuku merely smiled. I suspected as much. Your timeline showed no serious intent to follow through. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. You can see that? To some extent, Izuku replied. I can observe the probable branches of a person's immediate timeline when I focus on them. It's not mind reading, merely statistical probability based on time observation. As they returned to the classroom, students crowded around Izuku with questions and exclamations of amazement. He answered each one patiently, his enthusiasm for explaining his abilities reminiscent of a professor discussing a favorite subject. Can you stop time for everyone? Asked Tsuyu Asui, a girl with frog-like features. I can create fields of time stasis, Izuku confirmed. Though complete time cessation for the entire world would require more magical energy than I currently possess. Magical energy? Ida Tenya, a serious boy with engines in his calves, questioned. Don't you mean quirk factor? Izuku paused, realizing his slip. Forgive me, an old habit from my studies. Some theorists refer to quirk energy as having magical properties due to its seemingly physics-defying nature. This explanation satisfied his classmates, but the truth was more complex. Izuku had been careful not to reveal the full nature of his abilities, that they weren't a quirk at all, but magic from another world, carried through reincarnation. Only a few government officials and top heroes knew this truth. As the first day concluded, Izuku prepared to leave when he noticed Shoto Todoroki watching him with an unreadable expression. Something on your mind, Todoroki? Izuku asked. You're holding back, Todoroki stated flatly. Even with everything you showed today, you're still hiding your true capabilities. Izuku smiled. We all have depths yet to be explored. I look forward to seeing yours as well. Todoroki's heterochromatic eyes narrowed slightly before he turned and walked away without another word. Outside the school, Izuku was approached by All Might in his muscular form. "Young Midoriya, a moment, if you please." "All Might," Izuku greeted warmly. "How may I help you?" The symbol of peace laughed his booming laugh. "I should be asking you that. Your control has improved tremendously since I last saw your abilities in action." "I've had excellent teachers," Izuku acknowledged, though much of my progress comes from personal research and meditation, connecting more deeply with my inherent understanding of time mechanics. All Might's smile faltered slightly. "About that, the principal has informed me of your unique situation, that your power isn't exactly a quirk, but something else entirely." Izuku nodded, his expression turning serious. "My abilities stem from the magic system of another world, one I inhabited in a previous life. When I awakened to these memories at age 4, the magic awakened with me, and this previous life, All Might ventured. I was Julius Novachrono, Wizard King of the Clover Kingdom," Izuku stated simply, "a man who had mastered time magic to its highest degree." All Might absorbed this information with remarkable composure. "I see. And do you identify more as this Julius person or as Izuku Midoriya?" Izuku smiled. "I am both and neither. Julius's experiences and knowledge form the foundation of my power, but I am living as Izuku Midoriya in this world. I have my mother's kindness and my father's analytical mind alongside Julius's wisdom and curiosity." All Might nodded. "Well said, young man. I look forward to seeing how you develop at UA. With power like yours, you could become an exceptional hero." "That's my intention," Izuku replied. "Though I admit, I'm as interested in studying the diversity of quirks as I am in combating villains. This world's abilities are fascinating in their variety and application." As they parted ways, All Might couldn't help but feel that he was speaking not to a student, but to a colleague, perhaps even someone with wisdom beyond his own. The sensation was both reassuring and unsettling. The bus ride to the unforeseen simulation joint was filled with excited chatter. Class 1A had been training together for several weeks now, developing their quirks and learning the fundamentals of heroics. Izuku sat quietly, observing his classmates with genuine interest. He had come to appreciate each of them for their unique abilities and personalities. Uraraka's gravity manipulation fascinated him with its implications for spatial-time physics. Tokoyami's dark shadow presented an intriguing case of sentient quirk manifestation. Even Bakugo's explosions had subtle complexities in their chemical reactions that Izuku found worthy of study. "Hey, Midoriya," called Kaminari from across the aisle. "I've been meaning to ask, can you make someone younger? Like, reverse their age?" The question drew attention from several nearby students. "Theoretically, yes," Izuku replied. "I can reverse an individual's personal timeline, effectively returning them to a previous physical state. However, it's not something I do lightly. Tampering with a person's time existence has significant ethical implications." "But you could make someone younger?" pressed Mina excitedly. "I could reverse physical aging," Izuku clarified, "but memories and experiences would remain intact. The mind exists somewhat outside conventional time flow." "That's some serious power," Kirishima commented. "Super manly, but also kind of scary." Izuku nodded. "All significant power comes with significant responsibility. That's why proper training is essential." The conversation shifted as they arrived at the USJ, where the Space Hero 13 greeted them. The facility was impressive, a massive dome containing various disaster zones for rescue training. As 13 began explaining the exercise, Izuku noticed something unusual, a distortion in the air near the central plaza. His eyes narrowed as he focused on the time fluctuations. "Something's wrong," he said suddenly, interrupting 13's speech. "A spatial anomaly is forming." As if on cue, a dark portal materialized in the center of the facility. From within emerged dozens of individuals, villains of various shapes and sizes, led by a man covered in disembodied hands and accompanied by a towering black creature with an exposed brain. "Everyone, stay back," Aizawa commanded, pulling his goggles into place. "Sensei," Izuku said calmly, "those are not ordinary villains. The black one, in particular, its time signature is extremely unusual. Multiple overlapping time streams, as if several individuals have been compressed into one existence." Aizawa glanced at Izuku sharply. "Can you tell anything else?" The one creating the portals is manipulating space, not time. I can't directly counter his quirk with my abilities. The hand-covered one appears to be the leader, but the black creature is the most dangerous. 13. Protect the students, Aizawa ordered. I'll handle this. Sensei, Izuku said, allowing me to assist would be the most logical course of action. Aizawa hesitated. This isn't a training exercise, Midoriya. These are real villains. I'm well aware, Izuku replied, his usually cheerful demeanor replaced by serious determination. And with respect, my abilities are particularly suited to this situation. Before Aizawa could respond, the warp villain expanded his mist, attempting to engulf the students. Izuku reacted instantly. Chronosphere! A golden dome of light surrounded the students and teachers, creating a time barrier that the warp gate couldn't penetrate. Within the sphere, time flowed normally, but at its boundary, time slowed to near standstill, preventing the warp quirk from establishing a connection. Fascinating application of spatial quirk factors, Izuku commented, studying the purple mist straining against his time barrier, but ultimately limited by the time constants of this dimension. The hand-covered villain, later identified as Shigaraki Tomura, scratched his neck in agitation. What is this? The intel didn't mention anyone with time powers. This barrier won't hold indefinitely, Izuku informed Aizawa. I suggest we use this opportunity strategically. Aizawa nodded grimly. Can you transport the students back to campus? Mass time displacement would be risky without proper preparation, Izuku replied. However, I can create localized safety zones while we neutralize the threat. With a plan quickly established, Izuku modified his time field, creating a secure bubble around 13 and most of the students while allowing Aizawa and himself to step outside. Be careful, Midoriya, Uraraka called anxiously. Yeah, don't do anything stupid, Bakugo added, though his tone betrayed concern beneath the gruffness. Izuku gave them a reassuring smile. Time is on our side. As the barrier reformed around his classmates, Izuku turned to face the villains alongside Aizawa. The Erasure hero moved first, using his capture weapon and quirk-nullifying gaze to incapacitate the front line of attackers. Izuku observed for a moment, analyzing the battlefield with the tactical eye of a former military leader. Then he moved, his body briefly glowing gold as he accelerated his personal time stream. To the villains, he seemed to vanish and reappear among them, touching each one briefly. Where his hand made contact, opponents froze in place, encased in golden time stasis fields. 12 seconds, Izuku announced, returning to Aizawa's side as 24 villains stood immobilized. That's how long they'll remain frozen. I've calibrated the duration to conserve energy while maximizing our tactical advantage. Aizawa nodded, impressed despite himself. Focus on crowd control. I'll handle Shigaraki. As Aizawa engaged the hand-covered villain, Izuku turned his attention to the remaining attackers. With precise movements, he systematically disabled group after group, sometimes freezing them in time. Other times accelerating or decelerating their personal time streams to create disorientation and confusion. One villain with a gigantification quirk grew to 3 times his size, roaring as he charged at Izuku. Interesting, Izuku commented. Your quirk accelerates cellular growth while maintaining structural integrity. But what happens when that growth is timely isolated? With a gesture, Izuku created a split time field around the villain. The man's upper body continued to grow while his lower body reverted to normal size, creating a catastrophic imbalance that sent him toppling to the ground, incapacitated by his own quirk. Throughout the battle, Izuku maintained an air of analytical calm, often explaining the theoretical aspects of his techniques even as he executed them. It was as if part of him, the scholar that Julius had been, couldn't help but lecture on the fascinating interactions between time magic and quirks. From within their protective bubble, the students of Class 1A watched in awe as their classmate moved through the battlefield with the precision and confidence of a seasoned pro. He's amazing, Uraraka breathed. It's like he's fought in wars before, Tokoyami observed quietly. Even Bakugo was silent. His eyes narrowed in a mixture of reluctant admiration and competitive fire. The tide of battle shifted dramatically when Shigaraki ordered the Nomu, the muscular black creature with the exposed brain, to attack Aizawa. The Erasure hero found his techniques ineffective against the bioengineered monster, which seemed to possess multiple quirks including shock absorption and regeneration. Aizawa was brutally overpowered, his arm shattered in the Nomu's grip before being slammed into the ground repeatedly. Seeing his teacher in danger, Izuku's expression hardened. He appeared beside the Nomu in an instant, his hand pressed against the creature's massive arm. "Release him," Izuku commanded, his voice carrying an authority that made even Shigaraki pause. The Nomu, programmed only to follow Shigaraki's orders, ignored him. That was a mistake. Chronostasis. Golden light flared from Izuku's palm, encasing the Nomu in a time prison. The creature froze mid-motion, allowing Izuku to carefully extract Aizawa from its grip. "Sensei, your injuries are severe," Izuku observed, gently laying Aizawa down. "Allow me." Placing his hand over Aizawa's broken arm, Izuku focused his power. Time reversal, restoration. Golden light enveloped the injury, and before everyone's eyes, the broken bone reknit, torn tissue mended, and bruising faded as Izuku reversed the damage to a point before it had occurred. "That should restore full functionality," Izuku said, "though I recommend medical follow-up to ensure proper neural reconnection." Aizawa flexed his healed arm in amazement. "Midoriya, that's not in your official quirk registry." "I've been developing new applications," Izuku replied simply, turning back to face Shigaraki and the frozen Nomu. "Now, as for this artificial life form," Shigaraki scratched his neck furiously. "What did you do to Nomu? Release him!" "I've suspended him in time," Izuku explained, approaching the frozen creature. "Quite fascinating construction, multiple quirks forcibly integrated into a single entity. The time signatures are chaotic, suggesting these powers weren't originally his." Izuku placed both hands on the Nomu, his expression becoming serious. Time absorption. The golden stasis field surrounding the Nomu began to shimmer more intensely, then gradually shrink inward. As it did, streams of golden light flowed from the creature into Izuku's body. "What are you doing?" Shigaraki demanded, taking a step forward before Aizawa's capture weapon wrapped around him, restraining him. "I'm harvesting the accumulated time from this creature," Izuku explained. The multiple quirks within it represent significant time energy, lifespans and experiences compressed together. By absorbing this time, I convert it to magical power while simultaneously neutralizing the threat. Before their eyes, the Nomu began to change. Its massive muscles atrophied, its dark skin paled, and its imposing presence diminished until it resembled nothing more than an emaciated human form, completely drained of power. Izuku stepped back, his body briefly glowing with the absorbed energy. "That's quite a substantial power increase. I estimate my time reserves have increased by approximately 30%. Shigaraki began scratching his neck frantically. "This isn't fair. You're cheating. The final boss shouldn't appear in the first level." "Villains rarely concern themselves with fairness," Izuku replied calmly. "Now, I suggest you surrender before I'm forced to take more drastic measures." At that moment, the entrance doors of the USJ burst open as All Might arrived, his trademark smile conspicuously absent as he surveyed the scene. "Have no fear, for I am," he began his catchphrase, then stopped short when he saw dozens of villains frozen in time, Aizawa standing uninjured, and Izuku facing down Shigaraki beside a withered Nomu. Apparently late to the party, All Might finished, his expression shifting to surprise. Seeing All Might's arrival, Kurogiri, the warp villain, quickly enveloped Shigaraki. "We must retreat. This situation has become untenable. This isn't over." Shigaraki snarled as he disappeared into the portal. "I'll find a way to beat that time cheat." As the villains escaped, Izuku released his time barrier around the students, who rushed forward with exclamations of relief and amazement. "Dude, that was incredible. You took down that monster by yourself. Did you really heal Aizawa-sensei?" Izuku accepted their praise with modest nods, though his attention was focused on All Might, who approached with an unreadable expression. "Young Midoriya," All Might said quietly, "that creature was designed specifically to kill me. You neutralized it single-handedly." "It was an interesting challenge," Izuku replied. "The multiple quirks created a complex time signature that required careful manipulation." All Might placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. "You saved lives today, my boy. Not just your classmates, but quite possibly mine as well." As the authorities arrived and began processing the scene, collecting the time-frozen villains and securing the facility, Izuku found himself the center of attention, not just from his classmates, but from the professional heroes as well. Detective Tsukauchi approached him with a notebook. Midoriya-kun, if you don't mind, I'd like a detailed statement about the abilities you demonstrated today, particularly that power absorption technique. Of course, Detective, Izuku agreed. Though I should clarify, it wasn't power absorption in the conventional sense. I absorbed time energy, not quirks. The Nomu still technically possesses its quirks, but without the life force to activate them. As Izuku provided his statement, he was aware of the subtle shift in how people were looking at him, not just as a remarkable student, but as something else entirely. Something beyond the normal scope of heroes and villains. Later, as Class 1A returned to campus, Izuku found himself walking alongside Todoroki. "You're not just powerful," Todoroki observed quietly. "You're experienced. You fought like someone who's been in countless battles." Izuku considered his response carefully. "Let's just say I have memories that provide useful context for combat situations." "Memories," Todoroki repeated, his heterochromatic eyes studying Izuku intently. "Not training. Memories." Izuku smiled enigmatically. "We all have our secrets, Todoroki. I respect yours and hope you'll respect mine." The two walked in silence after that, a mutual understanding forming between them. Recognition of depth beyond what was visible on the surface. The UA Sports Festival arrived 2 weeks after the USJ incident, with security increased to unprecedented levels. The attack by the League of Villains had put the school in the spotlight, and the subsequent revelation of Izuku's role in defeating the Nomu had made him the center of public attention. "Midoriya, are you ready for this?" Uraraka asked as they prepared in the waiting room. "Everyone's going to be watching you specifically after what happened at USJ." Izuku nodded calmly. "Public scrutiny is something I've grown accustomed to. Besides, this festival provides an excellent opportunity to observe everyone's quirks in action." His classmates had noticed how Izuku's enthusiasm always peaked when discussing or analyzing quirks, as if the study of superpowers was his true passion, more so even than heroics itself. Present Mike's voice boomed throughout the stadium as the first-year classes entered the arena. The crowd roared with particular intensity when Class 1A was announced, and camera lenses zoomed in on Izuku. "And there he is, folks! The freshman phenomenon, Izuku Midoriya, the timekeeper who single-handedly defeated the USJ villains." Izuku maintained a composed expression despite the exaggerated announcement, walking alongside his classmates with quiet confidence. Midnight, serving as the referee, called for silence as she explained the first event, an obstacle race around the stadium. As the students took their positions at the starting line, Izuku found himself the target of determined looks from competitors across all departments. "On your mark, get set, go!" The race began with a bottleneck at the exit tunnel, students pushing and shoving to gain position. Todoroki immediately took the lead, creating an ice path that simultaneously propelled him forward while hindering those behind him. Izuku observed this with appreciation. "Excellent tactical application," he commented, before simply accelerating his personal time stream. To observers, Izuku seemed to blur forward, moving through the crowd at impossible speed. Unlike Ida's engine-based acceleration, Izuku's movement had an otherworldly quality. He didn't seem to be exerting himself at all, merely existing at a different time rate than everyone else. He easily caught up to Todoroki at the first obstacle, the robot sentinels from the entrance exam, including several multi-story zero-pointers. "Impressive that they repaired these so quickly," Izuku remarked as he arrived beside Todoroki, who glanced at him with surprise. "Planning to reverse them again?" Todoroki asked as he created an ice ramp to bypass the robots. "That would be repetitive." Izuku replied with a smile. "I prefer to explore different applications when possible." As a zero-pointer brought its massive fist down toward them, Izuku raised his hand. Chrono displacement. The robot's fist passed harmlessly through Izuku and Todoroki as if they existed in a different phase of reality. I've temporarily shifted our time state by a fraction of a second," Izuku explained as they continued running, robots unable to detect or interact with them. "We exist slightly out of sync with the current time stream." "That's convenient," Todoroki commented, clearly reassessing his strategy for competing with Izuku. They cleared the first obstacle effortlessly and approached the second. A massive canyon crossed by tight ropes. Todoroki created an ice bridge for himself, while Bakugo, who had caught up, used his explosions to propel himself across. Izuku observed their solutions with interest before implementing his own time platform. Golden discs of solidified time appeared in the air before him, creating stepping stones across the chasm. Each platform dissolved after he stepped off it, preventing others from following his path. That's a new one. Bakugo growled as he landed beside Izuku on the other side. You've been holding out on us, Midoriya. Not holding out, Izuku corrected. Developing. My understanding of time manipulation grows with each application. The final obstacle was a minefield, which Todoroki and Bakugo navigated carefully while maintaining their top positions. Izuku arrived shortly after them and paused, assessing the field with interest. The mines emit significant time distortion upon detonation, he observed. Fascinating. Rather than avoid the mines, Izuku deliberately triggered several in succession. As they exploded, he manipulated the expanding energy, capturing it in time stasis fields. Time collection. The frozen explosions were absorbed into Izuku's palm, converted into pure time energy. With each absorption, the golden glow around his body intensified. Time acceleration, maximum output. Using the harvested energy, Izuku accelerated himself to such a degree that he appeared to teleport past Todoroki and Bakugo, crossing the finish line before either could react. And Midoriya takes first place with a technique that defies description. Present Mike's voice boomed. Did anyone even see how he did that? The crowd erupted in cheers as Izuku decelerated back to normal time, waiting calmly at the finish line as Todoroki and Bakugo arrived seconds later, both looking frustrated at being outpaced so decisively. Good race, Izuku offered. Bakugo scowled. Don't patronize me, Midoriya. You weren't even trying. On the contrary, Izuku replied. I was trying quite specifically to harvest time energy from the obstacles. The race victory was secondary to the experimental data I gathered. This answer only seemed to irritate Bakugo further, while Todoroki studied Izuku with renewed interest. The second event was announced, a cavalry battle where students would form teams to capture headbands from other teams, with point values assigned based on ranking from the first event. As first place, Izuku was assigned a 10 million point headband, making him everyone's primary target. Well, that's rather direct, Izuku commented with amusement as Midnight explained the rules. Students immediately began forming teams, with many hesitating to approach Izuku despite, or because of, his high point value. The risk of partnering with the primary target seemed to outweigh the benefits of his formidable abilities. To everyone's surprise, it was Bakugo who approached Izuku first. Midoriya, he said gruffly, team up with me. Izuku raised an eyebrow. That's unexpected, Bakugo. I would have thought you'd prefer to compete against me rather than alongside me. Don't get the wrong idea, Bakugo growled. I still plan to beat you in the finals. But for now, the tactical advantage of combining our quirks is obvious. Izuku smiled. Your strategic thinking has improved. Very well, I accept. They were joined by Tokoyami, whose dark shadow provided excellent defense, and Mei Hatsume from the support department, who eagerly showcased her babies, support items she had created. Your time manipulation combined with my equipment will create magnificent synergy, Hatsume declared. Plus, the exposure will be excellent for my future business prospects. As the cavalry battle began, every team immediately targeted Izuku's group. Todoroki led a formidable team consisting of Ida, Yaoyorozu, and Kaminari, while other strong combinations advanced from multiple directions. They're employing a pincer movement, Izuku observed, attempting to limit our mobility options. So what's the plan? Tokoyami asked, dark shadow extending protectively around them. Time Fortress, Izuku replied. Bakugo, prepare for targeted offensive strikes when I create openings. Raising his hands, Izuku created a dome of golden light around their team. Time dilation field. Within the dome, they experienced time normally, but outside, everything slowed to a crawl. Other teams appeared to move in extreme slow motion, giving Izuku's team ample time to analyze and respond to each approach. Fascinating support items, Hatsume, Izuku commented, examining her equipment while they were protected in their time bubble. The hydraulic extensions could be modified to benefit from time acceleration. You think so? Hatsume's eyes gleamed with excitement. Could you demonstrate the effect? Perhaps later, Izuku replied. For now, we should focus on, are we going to attack or just hide in here? Bakugo interrupted impatiently. Patience, Bakugo, Izuku advised. I'm gathering tactical data. The field will collapse in approximately 30 seconds, at which point we'll execute a precision counteroffensive. When the Golden Dome faded, Izuku's team moved with perfect coordination. Tokoyami's dark shadow expanded under Izuku's time acceleration, moving twice as fast as normal. Hatsume's support items provided enhanced mobility, and Bakugo launched precise explosive attacks at key targets. Izuku himself rarely needed to use his powers offensively. Instead, he focused on creating localized time effects that either protected their headband or created opportunities for his teammates to shine. Bakugo, 30 degrees right, Izuku called, briefly slowing time around Todoroki's approaching team. Hatsume, extension deployment in 3, 2, 1. The coordination was flawless, allowing them to claim additional headbands while protecting their 10 million points. By the time the event ended, Izuku's team had not only maintained their lead, but had also collected several other high-value headbands. They finished in first place, with Todoroki's team taking second despite their best efforts. As they disbanded, Bakugo gave Izuku a grudging nod. Not bad, Midoriya. But in the tournament, you're mine. Izuku smiled. I look forward to seeing your full capabilities, Bakugo. The tournament bracket was announced after a lunch break, with Izuku set to face Hitoshi Shinso from General Studies in the first round. As they prepared, Izuku found himself approached by All Might in a secluded hallway. Young Midoriya, All Might said momentarily in his deflated form. A moment, if you would. Of course, All Might, Izuku replied. Is something concerning you? The symbol of peace studied him thoughtfully. I've been watching your performance today. Your control is exceptional, but I notice you've been careful not to showcase your full capabilities. Izuku nodded. There would be little benefit in revealing everything. Some applications of my ability are better kept in reserve. Such as the time absorption technique you used on the Nomu? Precisely. That particular ability raises questions that might be difficult to address in a public forum. All Might frowned. The public deserves to know the truth about their heroes, young Midoriya. And they will, Izuku assured him, in time, but revealing too much too quickly could cause unnecessary concern. After all, a quirk that can absorb life force might be misinterpreted as villainous by those who don't understand its mechanics. All Might couldn't argue with this logic, though his expression remained troubled. Just be careful, my boy. Power like yours comes with scrutiny as well as responsibility. I'm well aware, Izuku replied with a maturity that always surprised All Might. I've lived with both before. The first match of the tournament began with Izuku facing Shinso, whose quirk allowed him to brainwash anyone who responded to his words. Izuku entered the arena with calm confidence, immediately identifying the time patterns associated with mental manipulation quirks. So you're the famous timekeeper, Shinso called as they faced each other. Think you're better than the rest of us because you got into the hero course? Izuku smiled but didn't respond. Recognizing the attempt to trigger his quirk, Shinso frowned. Someone warned you about my quirk, didn't they? That's not very sporting. Still, Izuku remained silent, merely observing the time fluctuations around Shinso with interest. When midnight signaled the start of the match, Shinso tried a different approach. Your mother must be proud to have such a powerful son. Izuku's expression softened slightly at the mention of his mother, but he still didn't speak. Instead, he simply accelerated his personal time stream, appearing directly in front of Shinso before the general studies student could react. With a light touch to Shinso's shoulder, Izuku created a localized time distortion that made Shinso feel as if he were moving through molasses. Before Shinso could comprehend what was happening, Izuku had gently but firmly guided him out of bounds. Match over. Midoriya advances. Midnight announced. As the field effect dissipated, Izuku finally spoke to Shinso. Your quirk has fascinating applications for hero work. The ability to neutralize villains without violence is invaluable in many scenarios. Shinso stared at him in surprise. You're not mocking me? Not at all, Izuku replied earnestly. I've studied numerous quirks, and mind manipulation abilities like yours have tremendous potential. The entrance exam's robot-centric design simply didn't allow you to showcase your strengths. This unexpected support seemed to catch Shinso off guard more than his defeat had. Thanks, I guess. The tournament continued with notable matches including Todoroki's decisive victory over Sero, Bakugo's explosive triumph against Uraraka, though her performance earned significant respect, and Ida's speed-based strategy against Mei Hatsume, which became more of a support item showcase than an actual match. In the quarterfinals, Izuku faced Mina Ashido, whose acid quirk presented an interesting challenge. "No hard feelings when I melt that confident smile off your face, Midoriya," Mina called cheerfully as they took their positions. "Your acid has impressive chemical properties," Izuku replied. "I look forward to observing its time interaction." When the match began, Mina immediately went on the offensive, sliding across the arena on her acid while launching corrosive projectiles at Izuku. The attack was well executed, from multiple angles at varying viscosities, leaving little room for conventional evasion. Izuku didn't move. Instead, he raised his hand and spoke calmly. "Time severance." The acid projectiles froze in midair, then simply ceased to exist, cut from the current time stream as if they had never been launched. "Incredible," Present Mike's voice boomed. "Midoriya just erased Ashido's attack from existence." "Not exactly," Aizawa corrected over the announcement system. "Based on previous observations, he's likely displaced the acid into a different time state rather than erasing it completely." Mina didn't let the failed attack deter her. She continued her offensive, creating an acid vortex around Izuku that limited his visibility and mobility while she prepared a more concentrated attack. "Creative application," Izuku commented, seemingly unbothered by being surrounded by corrosive acid, but ultimately limited by time constants. With a circular gesture, Izuku created what appeared to be a clock face beneath his feet. "Chrono dispersal." The clock hands spun rapidly, and suddenly dozens of after-images of Izuku appeared throughout the arena, each one moving independently yet somehow connected to the original. "What the?" Mina faltered, unsure which Izuku to target. "I've distributed my time presence across multiple possible timelines," the Izukus explained in perfect unison. "Each version exists simultaneously in a state of quantum superposition." This explanation did little to help Mina's confusion as she tried to attack several of the images, only to have her acid pass through them harmlessly. The real Izuku appeared behind her, having used the distraction to reposition. "Your quirk truly is fascinating, Ashido. The molecular breakdown caused by your acid creates unique time signatures. I'd like to study further." Before Mina could turn, Izuku lightly touched her shoulder, creating a localized time stasis that immobilized her completely. "Ashido is immobilized. Midoriya advances to the semifinals." Midnight declared. Izuku immediately released the stasis field, allowing Mina to move again. "Thank you for the match. Your acid's interaction with time fields has provided valuable data." You're welcome," Mina replied, somewhat bewildered by Izuku's scholarly interest in her defeat. The semifinals matched Izuku against Tokoyami, whose Dark Shadow had demonstrated impressive power throughout the tournament. "Your sentient quirk presents a unique challenge, Tokoyami," Izuku said as they faced each other on the platform. "The time signature of Dark Shadow suggests a consciousness that exists partially in another dimension." "Dark Shadow and I are prepared for your time tactics," Tokoyami replied stoically. "We have observed your matches carefully." When the match began, Tokoyami immediately sent Dark Shadow to attack from multiple angles, using the shadow creature's speed and flexibility to create an omnidirectional assault. Izuku didn't attempt to dodge or freeze the attack. Instead, he watched with scholarly interest as Dark Shadow approached, then made a precise gesture with his hand. Time fragmentation. Dark Shadow suddenly split into multiple versions of itself, each moving at different speeds. Some accelerated, others slowed, all seeming confused and disoriented. Tokoyami grimaced, clearly feeling some form of feedback from his quirk's disruption. "I've separated Dark Shadow's time existence into multiple parallel states," Izuku explained. "Its consciousness is experiencing several timelines simultaneously, making coordinated action difficult." Tokoyami struggled to regain control of his fragmented quirk, while Izuku approached with measured steps. "The connection between you and Dark Shadow is fascinating," Izuku continued. "It suggests a form of time entanglement that transcends conventional physics." As Dark Shadow's fragments attempted to reconverge, Izuku made another gesture. Time restoration. The shadow being snapped back into a single entity, But before Tokoyami could direct it to attack again, Izuku placed his hand on Dark Shadow's form. Time manipulation, dormancy acceleration. Dark Shadow suddenly shrank, retreating into Tokoyami as if exposed to intense light, though the arena remained at normal brightness. I've temporarily accelerated Dark Shadow to a state it would normally reach after extended light exposure, Izuku explained as Tokoyami stared in disbelief at his diminished quirk. With Dark Shadow neutralized, Tokoyami found himself unable to mount an effective defense. Izuku approached and offered his hand. A surrender would be the most logical conclusion given the circumstances, he suggested kindly. Tokoyami nodded, recognizing his defeat. I concede the match. Tokoyami surrenders. Midoriya advances to the finals, Midnight announced. As they left the arena, Izuku assured Tokoyami, the effect is temporary. Dark Shadow will return to normal within approximately 10 minutes. Your understanding of quirks is uncanny, Tokoyami observed. It's as if you can see the fundamental nature of our abilities. Izuku smiled enigmatically. Let's just say I have a unique perspective on the matter. The other semi-final match between Todoroki and Bakugo was a spectacular clash of ice, fire, and explosions. Todoroki, who had refused to use his fire side throughout the tournament, finally embraced his full power when pushed to his limit by Bakugo's relentless attacks. The match ended with Todoroki advancing to face Izuku in the finals, though Bakugo's performance had been nothing short of exceptional. As Izuku prepared for the final match, he was approached by Todoroki in the waiting room. Midoriya, Todoroki said without preamble. Before we fight, I want to know something. At USJ, you mentioned having memories that help you in combat. What did you mean by that? Izuku considered the question carefully. Let's just say that my understanding of my abilities comes from experiences that transcend my current lifetime. Todoroki's heterochromatic eyes narrowed. You're being deliberately cryptic. Perhaps, Izuku acknowledged. Some truths are difficult to express in conventional terms, but I will tell you this. I recognize the burden of legacy you carry, Todoroki. The weight of expectations placed upon you by your father. Todoroki stiffened. What do you know about that? I know what it means to inherit power and purpose, Izuku replied. But remember, your quirk is yours, not his, just as you demonstrated in your match with Bakugo. Before Todoroki could respond, they were called to the arena for the final match. The stadium erupted in cheers as the two top contenders took their positions. Present Mike's introduction highlighted their journey through the tournament, emphasizing the clash between Todoroki's dual elemental power and Izuku's time manipulation. Begin! Midnight called, signaling the start of the match. Todoroki immediately unleashed a massive glacier, similar to the one that had instantly defeated Sero in the first round. The ice formation rushed toward Izuku with devastating speed and scale. Izuku raised his hand calmly. Time deconstruction. The glacier began to dissolve from the front, breaking down into its component parts as time reversed its formation. Ice returned to water vapor, thermal energy redistributed, and the entire attack simply unmade itself before reaching Izuku. As I thought, Todoroki said, undeterred, conventional attacks won't work against your time manipulation. He followed with a combination attack, ice from his right side, fire from his left, creating superheated steam as the elements clashed. The approach was tactically sound, creating an environmental hazard that would be difficult to completely nullify with time effects. Izuku nodded appreciatively. Excellent strategy, using phase transition to create multiple simultaneous threats. Rather than counter directly, Izuku accelerated his personal time stream, moving through the steam at such speed that he appeared as little more than a golden blur. He emerged directly in front of Todoroki, who barely had time to create an ice barrier between them. Your reaction time is impressive, Izuku commented, touching the ice barrier. But ice has a particularly vulnerable time structure. The barrier aged rapidly, becoming brittle and porous before crumbling away. Todoroki immediately countered with a fire blast, which Izuku dodged by briefly stepping sideways in time, disappearing and reappearing slightly offset from his previous position. Your dual quirk represents an interesting case study in elemental opposition, Izuku said as they exchanged attacks. Fire and ice, creation and destruction, hot and cold, all unified in a single individual. Despite Todoroki's valiant efforts, combining ice and fire in increasingly creative ways, he found himself unable to land a decisive blow against Izuku's time defenses. Each attack was either reversed, frozen in time, accelerated past its effective state, or simply avoided through time displacement. "Your power seems absolute," Todoroki observed, breathing heavily as he prepared another attack. "Is there any limit to what you can manipulate?" "All power has constraints," Izuku replied. "Mine are primarily related to energy expenditure and focus, but in this context, against conventional physical attacks, my advantages are significant." Todoroki nodded, then made his final play, a simultaneous release of his maximum firepower and ice creation, generating a massive temperature differential that created a localized weather event within the arena. Wind howled, moisture condensed, and the resulting storm threatened to overtake the entire stadium. "Incredible!" Present Mike shouted over the roaring elements. "Todoroki has created a miniature tempest." Izuku stood calmly at the center of the storm, observing the swirling chaos with genuine interest. "The interaction between thermal extremes creates fascinating time distortions. Thank you for this demonstration, Todoroki." Raising both hands, Izuku closed his eyes briefly before calling out, "Chrono Anastasis, localized restoration." Golden light expanded from Izuku in a perfect sphere, enveloping the storm. Within the sphere, time began to reverse. Moisture returned to its previous state, temperature gradients normalized, and the chaotic weather system deconstructed itself piece by piece until the arena was exactly as it had been before Todoroki's attack. In the same motion, Izuku appeared beside Todoroki, his hand lightly touching the dual quirk user's shoulder. "Time suspension," Izuku said quietly. Todoroki found himself unable to move, his body locked in a golden stasis field that immobilized him completely while leaving his consciousness aware. "Todoroki is immobilized. Midoriya wins the tournament," Midnight declared as the crowd erupted in thunderous applause. Izuku immediately released Todoroki from stasis. "An excellent match. Your quirk's versatility is truly remarkable." Todoroki stared at him with a mixture of resignation and respect. "You were holding back the entire time, weren't you?" "As were you," Izuku replied. "Until your match with Bakugo, you restricted yourself to half your potential. We all have our reasons for restraint." As they left the arena together, Todoroki said quietly, "Whatever your powers truly are, Midoriya, they're beyond anything I've encountered before." Izuku smiled. "The world is full of wonders, Todoroki. Our quirks or abilities are just the beginning." The award ceremony was a formality, with Izuku receiving the gold medal, Todoroki the silver, and Bakugo and Tokoyami sharing bronze. All Might presented the medals, with a particularly meaningful look as he placed the gold around Izuku's neck. "Congratulations, young Midoriya," All Might said for all to hear. "Your performance today was nothing short of extraordinary." "Thank you, All Might," Izuku replied, "though I still have much to learn about being a true hero." As the sports festival concluded, Izuku found himself the center of attention. Media requests, scout offers from top agencies, and countless messages from admirers flooding his phone. Through it all, he maintained the same calm demeanor and scholarly interest in those around him. That evening, as he prepared to leave campus, he was approached by Principal Nezu. "A moment of your time, Midoriya-kun," the intelligent animal requested. "Of course, Principal," Izuku replied. They walked together toward a quiet corner of the campus, away from the departing crowds. "Your performance today was remarkable, but not unexpected," Nezu began. "What interests me more is what you chose not to reveal." Izuku nodded. "Some aspects of my abilities are better introduced gradually. Society tends to fear what it doesn't understand." "Indeed," Nezu agreed, "which is why I wanted to extend a special offer. In addition to your regular hero studies, I'd like to propose a research partnership between yourself and UA's development studio. Your understanding of time mechanics could revolutionize our approach to quirk theory." "That's a generous offer," Izuku replied, "and one I'd be happy to accept under certain conditions regarding information security." "Naturally," Nezu said. "We'll establish appropriate protocols. After all, knowledge can be as dangerous as power when misapplied." As they parted ways, Nezu added, "One more thing, Midoriya-kun. The ability you use to drain the gnome, it's not in any of your official registrations." Izuku met the principal's intelligent gaze steadily. "No, it isn't. I trust you understand the implications if such an ability became widely known." "I do," Izuku assured him, "which is why discretion has always been my policy." Nezu nodded, seemingly satisfied. Then I look forward to our collaboration, Midoriya-kun, or perhaps I should say, Wizard King. Izuku's eyes widened slightly. The first time he had shown genuine surprise since arriving at UA. Nezu chuckled. Don't worry, your secret is safe with me. After all, we all have our past lives to contend with, don't we? As the principal walked away, Izuku stood in thoughtful silence. The path ahead would be complex, balancing his growing public profile with the deeper truth of his abilities. But he had navigated such challenges before, in another life, as another kind of leader. Time is on my side, he murmured to himself, a familiar golden glow briefly illuminating his eyes as he looked toward the horizon. And there's so much more to discover in this fascinating world of heroes. The aftermath of the sports festival brought new challenges and opportunities for Class 1A. With their impressive performances broadcast nationwide, each student received internship offers from pro-hero agencies. Izuku, as the tournament champion and already famous timekeeper, received the most offers by far, over 3,000 agencies expressing interest in mentoring him. 3,242 offers, Aizawa announced, sliding a thick folder across his desk to Izuku. A new UA record. Izuku accepted the folder with a thoughtful expression. Quantity doesn't necessarily indicate quality. I'm more interested in finding an agency that will allow me to further develop my time applications. Then you might want to consider this one, Aizawa suggested, pulling a specific application from the stack. Sir Night-Eye, All Might's former sidekick. His foresight quirk has certain time aspects that might complement your abilities. Izuku examined the offer with interest. Foresight, the ability to see future events. Yes, that could provide valuable comparative data for my own precognitive capabilities. And so, as his classmates dispersed to various agencies across Japan, Izuku reported to Sir Night-Eye's office in Tokyo. The building was understated, a simple office complex with minimal hero branding. Inside, Izuku was greeted by Bubble Girl, Night-Eye's sidekick. Midoriya-san, she said with a polite bow. Sir is expecting you. She led him to a spacious office where a tall, serious-looking man with green hair and glasses was reviewing documents. Sir Night-Eye looked up as they entered, his piercing gaze immediately fixing on Izuku. Midoriya Izuku, he stated rather than asked. The timekeeper. Sir Night-Eye, Izuku replied with a respectful nod. Thank you for your offer. Night-Eye studied him with unsettling intensity. I've been following your development since the elementary school incident. Your control has improved significantly. I've had excellent mentors, Izuku acknowledged, and ample time to practice. Night-Eye's expression remained stern. Before we proceed, I need to verify something. He held up a stamp. Make me laugh within the next minute, and I'll consider you worthy of my tutelage. Izuku blinked, momentarily surprised by the request. Then understanding dawned in his eyes. You're testing my character, not my sense of humor, he observed. You want to see if I'll use my time abilities to cheat the test, perhaps by slowing time to give myself more than a minute, or by observing multiple potential futures to find the perfect joke. Night-Eye's expression didn't change. 30 seconds remaining, Izuku smiled. I don't need to manipulate time to pass this test, because the real humor is in your expectation that I would. He extended his hand. May I see that stamp? Night-Eye hesitated, then handed it over. Izuku examined it briefly before returning it. All Might memorabilia, limited edition from his American debut, Izuku noted. You've maintained it meticulously, but there's a small time degradation in the rubber compound, approximately 2 years of accelerated aging caused by improper storage at some point. I could reverse that damage for you if you'd like. Night-Eye stared at him for a long moment, then suddenly burst into laughter. Not at anything Izuku had said or done, but at the sheer absurdity of the situation. You analyzed my collectibles' atomic degradation, he managed between chuckles. Of course you did. Izuku tilted his head. Did I pass? Night-Eye composed himself, though his eyes retained an unusual sparkle. You weren't what I expected, Midoriya, and that's perhaps the highest praise I can offer. He pressed the stamp onto a document, officially accepting Izuku as his intern. Welcome to my agency. The internship proved to be exactly what Izuku had hoped for, an opportunity to compare different forms of time perception. While Night Eye's foresight allowed him to see a single future timeline when touching a person, Izuku's precognitive abilities allowed him to perceive multiple potential time streams simultaneously. Your foresight sees what will happen, Izuku explained during one of their analysis sessions. My time perception sees what could happen across multiple possibilities. A significant distinction, Night Eye acknowledged. My quirk shows a fixed future, inevitable once glimpsed. Yours seems to offer more flexibility. Reality isn't as deterministic as your quirk suggests, Izuku replied. Time is more fluid, with countless branching possibilities at every moment. What your foresight perceives as inevitable is simply the highest probability timeline based on current factors. This philosophical difference became practically relevant when Night Eye received intelligence about a series of hero killings in Hosu City. The hero killer Stain, Night Eye explained, displaying case files on a large screen. He's targeted 17 heroes so far, killing 4 and critically injuring the rest. His quirk appears to be blood-related, possibly paralysis after ingestion. Izuku studied the information with serious focus. His attack pattern shows a clear ideological motivation rather than random violence. He's selecting targets based on specific criteria. Correct, Night Eye confirmed. He targets heroes he deems false, those motivated by fame or money rather than genuine heroism. A self-appointed judge of hero worthiness, Izuku mused. Fascinating moral framework if severely misapplied. Night Eye adjusted his glasses. We've received intelligence suggesting he's currently in Hosu. I've coordinated with other agencies, including Gran Torino, who's mentoring your classmate Ida Tenya. At the mention of Ida, Izuku's expression sharpened. Ida's brother was among Stain's victims, Native the Turbo Hero. Yes, Night Eye confirmed, which makes this situation particularly volatile. Ida may be harboring vengeful intentions, Izuku nodded grimly. Then we should prioritize locating both Stain and Ida before they find each other. That evening, they departed for Hosu alongside Bubble Girl and Centipeter, Night Eye's other sidekick. As they traveled, Izuku closed his eyes, focusing on the time threads connecting his classmates' future. Ida's timeline is turbulent, he murmured. Multiple divergence points in the near future, several with significant trauma signatures. Night Eye glanced at him sharply. You can sense that from here? Not precise events, Izuku clarified, but the emotional resonance creates distinctive time patterns. Ida is approaching a critical decision point that could dramatically alter his future. When they arrived in Hosu, the city was already in chaos. Multiple fires had broken out across different districts, and reports of strange creatures attacking civilians poured in. Nomu, Izuku recognized immediately, similar to the one at USJ, though these appear to be less developed versions. A diversion, Night Eye deduced, creating chaos to divert hero resources while something else occurs. Izuku nodded. Stain's preferred hunting ground is alleyways and narrow streets away from main thoroughfares. The Nomu are drawing attention to the city centers. Split up, Night Eye ordered his sidekicks. Coordinate with local heroes to contain the Nomu. Midoriya and I will search for Stain and Ida. As Bubble Girl and Centipeter departed, Izuku placed his hand on Night Eye's shoulder. I can accelerate our search efficiency. Golden light briefly enveloped them both as Izuku created a localized time dilation field. Outside their bubble, the world appeared to move in extreme slow motion, giving them ample time to search methodically through Hosu's back alleys, while barely any real time passed. Remarkable, Night Eye commented as they moved through the frozen chaos. This is how you experience the world regularly? Only when necessary, Izuku replied. Constant time acceleration would be mentally exhausting, even for me. They searched through narrow streets and alleyways, moving with purpose through the time-slowed city. After covering several blocks, Izuku suddenly stopped, his eyes glowing with golden light. There, he said, pointing to a narrow side street. A time disturbance, multiple overlapping fate lines converging. They rushed to the location, and as they turned the corner, the scene confirmed Izuku's prediction. Stain, a gaunt man with a tattered scarf and multiple blades, stood over two immobilized heroes, Native and Ida Tenya. A third student, Todoroki, was keeping Stain at bay with alternating blasts of ice and fire. Izuku immediately released the time dilation field, returning himself and Night Eye to normal time flow. Sir Night-Eye and Midoriya? Todoroki called, surprised by their sudden appearance. Stain turned, his bandaged face revealing bloodshot eyes filled with fanatical purpose. More children playing at being heroes? And Sir Night-Eye himself. Have you come to judge me, or to be judged? Hero Killer Stain, Night-Eye stated formally. You are under arrest for multiple counts of murder and assault. Stain's unsettling smile widened. Only All Might is worthy to make such declarations. The rest of you are pretenders to heroism, especially you, Sir Night-Eye, who stood in the shadow of greatness without understanding its essence. His eyes shifted to Izuku, narrowing with sudden interest. But you have different eyes that see beyond the corruption of this hero society. Izuku stepped forward, his posture calm but alert. I see a man who identified a genuine problem but chose the wrong solution. Violence against heroes doesn't create a better society, it only breeds more fear and hatred. Stain laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. Pretty words from a child. Let's see if your blood speaks the same philosophy. He lunged with frightening speed, blade extended toward Izuku's face. To everyone except Izuku, the attack appeared almost instantaneous, Stain's quirk and training making him one of the fastest fighters in Japan. But to Izuku, who perceived time differently, the attack moved in slow motion. He observed the blade's trajectory with analytical calm, and noting the precise angle of approach and the time signature of Stain's movement. Chrono reflex, Izuku murmured. Rather than freezing Stain completely, Izuku created a localized time field that slowed the hero killer to 1/10 normal speed while allowing himself to move normally. He stepped casually aside from the now sluggish blade, then placed his hand on Stain's extended arm. Time disruption. Golden light spread from Izuku's palm into Stain's body, creating a cascade effect that temporarily disoriented the villain's nervous system by placing different parts of his body in slightly different time streams. Stain's movements became uncoordinated, his limbs responding seconds apart from his brain's commands. What have you done to me? Stain growled, struggling to maintain his balance. I've desynchronized your time state, Izuku explained calmly. Your nervous system is experiencing time at different rates throughout your body, making coordinated movement temporarily impossible. While Stain struggled against this effect, Izuku knelt beside Ida and Native. Blood coagulation quirk, he diagnosed, examining their time signatures. He's manipulating the iron content in your bloodstream to affect your motor functions. Placing a hand on each of them, Izuku focused his power. Partial time reversal. Golden light spread through their bodies as Izuku selectively reversed the effect of Stain's quirk, returning their blood composition to its state before contamination. Within seconds, both Ida and Native regained movement in their limbs. Midoriya, Ida gasped, tears forming in his eyes. I was trying to... I know, Izuku interrupted gently. Revenge for your brother, but that path leads only to deeper darkness, Ida. Stain, still fighting against the time disruption affecting his body, snarled with renewed fury. You dare interfere with my justice? False heroes must be purged. With a tremendous effort of will, he partially overcame Izuku's time effect, lunging toward them with a blade in each hand. Night-Eye moved to intercept, but Izuku was faster. Chronostasis. Golden light erupted from Izuku's palm, encasing Stain in a perfect time prison. The hero killer froze mid-attack, his expression of fanatical rage preserved like an insect in amber. Complete time suspension, Izuku explained to his stunned audience. He's conscious but unable to move, trapped in a moment between moments. Night-Eye adjusted his glasses, studying the frozen villain with professional interest. How long will this effect last? As long as necessary, Izuku replied. I can maintain it indefinitely if required, though I'll release him once proper containment is arranged. As the immediate danger passed, Izuku turned his attention to Ida, who had slumped against a wall, his expression haunted by shame. I failed as a hero, Ida whispered. I sought vengeance instead of justice. You made a mistake, Izuku corrected, placing a hand on his classmate's shoulder. But the timeline of your life isn't defined by single moments, Ida. It's the pattern of choices over time that determines who we become. Todoroki, who had been observing silently, approached. Midoriya, you arrived exactly when needed. Was that coincidence or... I sensed the time convergence, Izuku explained. Critical moments in history tend to create distinctive patterns in the time stream, particularly when multiple significant lives intersect. As police and additional heroes arrived to secure the area and contain the Nomu attacks elsewhere in the city, Izuku maintained his time stasis on Stain. The hero killer remained frozen in his golden prison, a living statue that drew wary glances from even experienced professionals. "We'll need specialized containment," a police officer noted, eyeing the time-locked villain. "His quirk makes traditional methods risky." "I have a solution," Izuku offered. He placed both hands on the time field surrounding Stain and concentrated. Chrono Seal. The golden light surrounding Stain condensed and hardened, forming a crystalline structure that encased him completely while maintaining his suspended state. "This will hold him indefinitely," Izuku explained. "The time field is self-sustaining now, drawing energy from the natural flow of time around it. He'll remain conscious but completely immobile until the seal is deliberately broken." The officers exchanged uncomfortable glances. "That's quite a power, young man." Night Eye placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. "The alternative would be constant supervision by heroes with nullification quirks. This method is more humane and secure." As they prepared to transport the crystallized villain, Izuku noticed something unusual: a small black bird watching from a nearby rooftop. Its time signature was distinctly abnormal, suggesting intelligence beyond that of an ordinary animal. Without drawing attention to it, Izuku created a subtle time tracker, a faint golden thread that would allow him to follow the bird's movements through time even after it departed. That night, as the chaos in Hosu subsided, Izuku sat in his temporary quarters at the local hero agency, meditating on the day's events. The door opened quietly as Sir Night Eye entered. "The official report has been filed," Night Eye informed him. "Stain has been secured in a special containment facility, his time prison intact." Izuku nodded. "Good, though I suspect this isn't the end of his influence." "What do you mean?" "Ideas are harder to contain than people," Izuku explained. Stain's ideology, however misguided, touched on genuine societal issues regarding hero authenticity. His methods were unconscionable, but his critique will resonate with those already disillusioned with the commercialization of heroism. Night Eye studied him with renewed interest. "You speak with the perspective of someone who has seen ideological movements rise and fall before." Izuku met his gaze steadily. "Perhaps I have." "All Might mentioned your unique situation," Night Eye said carefully, "that your abilities might originate from something other than a conventional quirk." "All Might should learn to be more discreet," Izuku remarked with a slight smile. "But yes, my perspective is informed by experiences beyond this current lifetime." Night Eye considered this. "In my career, I've encountered many extraordinary individuals with remarkable quirks. But you, Midoriya, you exist in a category entirely your own." "We all have our paths to walk," Izuku replied. "Mine simply has the benefit of previous experience." As Night Eye departed, Izuku returned to his meditation, focusing on the time thread he had attached to the mysterious bird. Through this connection, he could sense the creature's movement across Japan, eventually settling in a location that radiated time distortion, as if multiple conflicting timelines converged around a single point. "Interesting," Izuku murmured to himself. "Someone else is manipulating time, though in a much cruder fashion than my methods." He made a mental note to investigate this anomaly further when the opportunity presented itself. For now, he had learned what he needed from this internship, both about Sir Night Eye's foresight and about the emerging threats to hero society. The following day, as the internship concluded and students prepared to return to UA, Izuku found himself approached by both Todoroki and Ida. "Midoriya," Ida began formally, bowing deep, "I must thank you for your intervention and apologize for my dishonorable actions." "Stand up, Ida," Izuku replied kindly. "As I said before, a single mistake doesn't define your entire timeline. What matters is how you proceed from here." Todoroki, typically reserved, added, "Your control over your power is impressive. The way you neutralized Stain without harming him demonstrates mastery beyond what you showed even at the sports festival." Izuku smiled. "Different situations call for different applications. Combat in a tournament has different parameters than capturing a dangerous villain." As they boarded the train back to UA, Izuku gazed out the window, his thoughts turning to the future. The encounter with Stain had confirmed what he had already suspected. This world, for all its colorful heroes and villains, faced deeper systemic challenges that no amount of combat prowess could easily solve. "Time reveals all truths," he murmured, watching the landscape blur past, "and we have much still to discover." Upon returning to UA, Class 1A found themselves immediately thrust into preparation for final exams. With the first semester coming to a close, both written tests and practical evaluations loomed on the horizon. For most students, this created considerable stress. For Izuku, it presented yet another opportunity to analyze and understand the fascinating quirks of his classmates. "The practical exam will likely pit us against robots again," Kaminari speculated during lunch. "Like in the entrance exam." "I wouldn't be so certain," Izuku replied, thoughtfully stirring his tea. "Logical progression would suggest a different challenge, one that tests not just our quirks, but our growth as heroes in training." Uraraka leaned forward. "Do you have some inside information, Midoriya?" "Not specifically," he answered, "but time patterns suggest significant divergence from previous examination formats. The timeline resonances indicate a more personal challenge." His classmates had grown somewhat accustomed to Izuku's unusual way of perceiving the world, though his predictions still unsettled them at times with their consistent accuracy. True to Izuku's forecast, Aizawa announced the next day that the practical exam would involve paired students facing off against UA teachers. "You'll be working in teams of 2, Aizawa explained, displaying the matchups on screen. "Your objective is either to escape through a designated exit gate or to successfully restrain your teacher opponent using these specialized handcuffs." The class murmured with concern as they processed this information. Fighting against pro heroes, their own teachers no less, presented a challenge far beyond facing mindless robots. Izuku found himself paired with Bakugo, facing All Might himself, a pairing that created immediate tension. "Don't get in my way, Midoriya," Bakugo growled as they reviewed the match parameters. "I don't need your time tricks to beat All Might." Izuku observed him with genuine interest. "Your determination is admirable, Bakugo, but pragmatism would suggest that combining our abilities offers the highest probability of success." "Ch," Bakugo scoffed. "Just stay back and watch how a real hero fights." The day of the practical exam arrived with clear skies and nervous anticipation. Each team was assigned a specific time slot and testing ground. As Izuku and Bakugo waited for their turn, they watched their classmates' performances on monitor screens. Some teams performed admirably. Todoroki and Yaoyorozu demonstrated exceptional strategic coordination against Aizawa, while Asui and Tokoyami leveraged their quirks. Complementary aspects to outmaneuver ectoplasm, others struggled significantly. Kaminari and Ashido found themselves quickly outsmarted by Principal Nezu, while Kirishima and Sato were overwhelmed by Cementos' superior terrain control. Finally, Izuku and Bakugo's turn arrived. They entered a cityscape testing ground, immediately confronted by the imposing figure of All Might in a weighted costume designed to limit his overwhelming power to a more manageable level. "Young heroes!" All Might boomed with his characteristic smile, though there was something more serious in his eyes. "Show me what you've learned this semester." Bakugo immediately launched himself forward with an explosive propulsion, ignoring Izuku's call for strategic planning. "Die!" Bakugo roared, detonating a massive explosion directly in All Might's face. When the smoke cleared, All Might stood unharmed, his smile unchanged. "A direct approach. Admirable spirit. Young Bakugo. But..." With speed that belied his weighted costume, All Might appeared behind Bakugo, catching him with a restrained but still devastating backhand that sent the explosive student tumbling across the pavement. "Insufficient power!" All Might finished. Izuku observed the exchange with analytical calm, noting the precise time pattern of All Might's movements. Even with the weights, the symbol of peace moved with exceptional speed and precision, a testament to his mastery of One for All. "Bakugo," Izuku called. "His movement pattern follows a distinctive time signature. If we coordinate, I can create openings for your explosions." "Shut up!" Bakugo snarled, rising to his feet with determination blazing in his eyes. "I don't need your help." He launched himself at All Might again, this time employing more tactical movement, using his explosions to maneuver unpredictably around the pro hero while launching attacks from multiple angles. All Might handled the assault with practiced ease, though he acknowledged Bakugo's skill. Excellent mobility. Young Bakugo, your control has improved significantly. Despite Bakugo's improvements, the outcome remained inevitable. All Might caught him mid-air with carefully moderated strength, then slammed him into the ground with enough force to create a small crater. But power alone isn't enough against experience, All Might declared. As Bakugo struggled to rise, All Might turned his attention to Izuku, who had remained in the same position, observing, "Young Midoriya, will you engage or have you conceded already?" "Neither, All Might," Izuku replied calmly. "I've been analyzing your time patterns. Your movements create distinctive signatures, accelerations and decelerations that form a recognizable combat rhythm." All Might's smile faltered slightly. "Analysis alone won't secure victory." He launched himself toward Izuku with tremendous speed, his fist drawn back for a restrained but still formidable punch. To his surprise, his fist passed through Izuku's form as if through mist. "Time displacement," Izuku's voice explained from behind All Might. "I shifted my time state by approximately 0.5 seconds, making physical interaction impossible during that interval." All Might turned with impressive speed, launching another attack that met the same result. No matter how he adjusted his approach, his blows encountered only empty air, as Izuku seemed to exist slightly out of phase with the current time stream. "An interesting defensive technique," All Might acknowledged. "But how will you complete the objective if you cannot physically interact with the world?" "A valid question," Izuku conceded, returning to normal time alignment. "Defensive measures alone won't achieve victory." He glanced toward Bakugo, who had regained his footing and was watching their exchange with a mixture of frustration and reluctant interest. "Bakugo," Izuku called. All Might's weight restraints reduce his speed by approximately 17.3%, creating a 0.42-second reaction delay in his counter movements. If we coordinate, that window is sufficient for a combined attack. "I told you I don't need," Bakugo began, but was interrupted as All Might launched himself toward Izuku again. This time, instead of phasing through the attack, Izuku raised his hand. Chrono Field Selective Deceleration. Golden light surrounded All Might, not stopping him completely but reducing his movement speed to roughly 1/3 normal. The hero's eyes widened as he found himself moving through what felt like invisible molasses. "Bakugo! Now!" Izuku called. Despite his earlier protests, Bakugo's combat instincts recognized the opportunity. He launched himself toward the slowed All Might, detonating a precisely aimed explosion at the hero's weighted harness. The explosion, combined with All Might's reduced defensive capability within the time field, successfully damaged the restraint system. All Might broke free of the deceleration effect through sheer power, but now found himself facing two students working in unexpected synchronization. "Interesting," All Might said, dropping his exaggerated speech pattern as he reassessed the situation. "You've found a way to work together despite your differences." "Tactical necessity," Bakugo grudgingly admitted. "Optimal probability for success," Izuku added. What followed was a coordinated assault that showcased both students' abilities. Izuku created localized time effects that briefly slowed or disoriented All Might, creating openings that Bakugo exploited with increasingly precise explosions. They moved with surprising harmony, Izuku's calm calculation complementing Bakugo's fierce determination. All Might, despite his overwhelming power, found himself challenged by their teamwork. When he attempted to separate them, Izuku would create time corridors that allowed Bakugo to reposition instantly. When he focused on neutralizing Izuku's time effects, Bakugo would capitalize with devastating attack combinations. "Your coordination is impressive," All Might acknowledged after blocking a particularly effective sequence. "But time is running out for your exam." Indeed, the clock showed only 5 minutes remaining. Victory through combat seemed increasingly unlikely against the symbol of peace, even with his self-imposed limitations. "Bakugo," Izuku said quietly, "the exit gate is our most viable option now." For once, Bakugo didn't argue. "Fine, what's the plan?" "I'll create a time distraction," Izuku explained. "When I give the signal, head directly for the gate. I'll ensure your path remains clear." Bakugo nodded reluctantly. "Don't screw this up, Midoriya." Izuku stepped forward, facing All Might directly. "You mentioned time running out, All Might. An interesting choice of words given the circumstances." He raised both hands, golden light gathering around him in spiraling patterns. Chrono Mirage. The light expanded outward, forming dozens of identical copies of Izuku that surrounded All Might from all directions. Unlike conventional clones, these time duplicates each existed in slightly different time streams, all present simultaneously yet occupying fractionally different moments. These aren't illusions, Izuku explained as All Might studied the duplicates with surprise. Each is me, extracted from microscopically different potential timelines and temporarily stabilized in this reality. All Might launched an attack at the nearest duplicate, only for his fist to pass through it harmlessly. He quickly adjusted, attacking another and another with the same result. Only one exists in perfect alignment with the current time stream, Izuku continued. The others are phase-shifted by millionths of a second, enough to prevent physical interaction while maintaining visual presence. As All Might attempted to identify the real Izuku among the duplicates, Izuku gave the signal. Now, Bakugo! Bakugo launched himself toward the exit gate with explosive acceleration, covering ground rapidly while All Might was occupied with the time duplicates. When All Might noticed Bakugo's movement and attempted to intercept, he found his path blocked by a wall of golden light, a time barrier that slowed everything passing through it to near standstill. Chrono Partition. Izuku's voice explained from multiple directions simultaneously. A selective time field that affects only those with specific time signatures. In this case, yours, All Might. The barrier didn't completely stop All Might. His raw power was simply too great, but it delayed him just long enough for Bakugo to reach the exit gate. As Bakugo passed through, a buzzer sounded, signaling their success. Test complete, announced the automated system. Team Midoriya and Bakugo pass. The time duplicates dissipated as Izuku released his technique, returning to normal as All Might approached with a thoughtful expression. Well done, young Midoriya, All Might said. That application of your ability was unexpected. Time duplication has limited practical utility in most scenarios, Izuku explained. It requires precise calculation and significant energy expenditure, but in this context, the distraction value justified the cost. All Might turned to Bakugo, who stood with arms crossed in a complex expression, part satisfaction at passing, part frustration at having relied on Izuku's abilities. And you, young Bakugo, accepting tactical assistance when the situation demanded it shows growth in your hero mentality. Whatever, Bakugo muttered, a win is a win. As they exited the testing ground, Izuku found himself walking beside Bakugo in unusual silence. Finally, the explosive student spoke. Those duplicates, he said abruptly. They were all really you? Izuku nodded. In a manner of speaking, different versions of me from microscopically divergent timelines. Essentially the same person with minimal variations. So you can see those other timelines, Bakugo pressed. Different versions of reality. I can perceive them, Izuku clarified, though most divergences are insignificant. Versions where I stood slightly differently or spoke with a different intonation. Major divergences require more energy to access. Bakugo was quiet for another moment. Are there timelines where I become the #1 hero instead of you? The question was asked with uncharacteristic vulnerability, revealing the core insecurity beneath Bakugo's aggressive exterior. Izuku considered his response carefully. There are timelines where every possibility occurs, Bakugo, including many where you achieve greatness through your own path, not through comparison with others. That's not what I asked, Bakugo growled. I know, Izuku acknowledged, but it's the answer that matters, not the one you want to hear. They parted ways with Bakugo still scowling, though perhaps with slightly less hostility than before. The final exams concluded with most of Class 1A passing successfully, though some, like Kaminari and Ashido, would require remedial training. As the semester drew to a close, Aizawa announced that their next challenge would be a summer training camp in a remote forest location. The purpose is to strengthen your quirks and combat capabilities through intensive training, he explained. Details will be provided before departure, but prepare for a demanding experience. As students chattered excitedly about the upcoming camp, Izuku found himself approached by All Might after class. Young Midoriya, the hero said in his deflated form, voice low to avoid being overheard. A moment, if you would. They walked to a private office where All Might carefully closed the door before turning to Izuku with an unusually serious expression. That technique you used in the exam, he began. The duplicates from different timelines. I've been thinking about its implications. Izuku nodded. I suspected you might. If you can access alternate timelines, even in such a limited fashion, All Might hesitated. Does that mean you can see potential futures? Like Sir Night-Eye's foresight? Not exactly, Izuku replied. I can observe probability branches, potential paths stemming from the current moment. But unlike Night-Eye, I don't see a single fixed future. I see multiple possibilities with varying probability densities. All Might seemed troubled by this answer. Young Midoriya, is there something you're not telling me? Something about the future that concerns you? Izuku studied the symbol of peace thoughtfully. The time patterns surrounding All Might had always been complex, threads of fate extending in multiple directions, yet converging towards certain fixed points that seemed increasingly immutable. All timelines face periods of significant upheaval. All Might, Izuku said carefully. This world is approaching such a convergence point, a time when established structures will be challenged and traditional paradigms questioned. You mean villain activity? The League? More than that, Izuku replied. A fundamental shift in how society views heroes and quirks. The current system has structural weaknesses that can't be addressed through conventional heroics alone. All Might's expression grew more troubled. You speak with the certainty of someone who has witnessed such changes before. Perhaps I have, Izuku acknowledged. In another time, another place, I observed how societies evolve through crisis. The patterns are remarkably consistent across different worlds. All Might was silent for a long moment, processing this information. Finally, he asked, "What should we do?" Prepare, Izuku answered simply. Not just for combat, but for transformation. The hero society that emerges from the coming challenges may look very different from what exists today. As they parted ways, All Might couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that he had just spoken not with a student, but with someone who had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, someone whose perspective transcended the normal human experience of time. For Izuku, the conversation merely confirmed what he had already observed in the time threads surrounding Japan's hero society. Change was coming, inevitable and necessary, though potentially painful in its implementation. All great societies evolve or perish, he murmured to himself as he walked through UA's corridors, golden light briefly flickering in his eyes. And time waits for no one, not even those who can manipulate it. The summer air hung heavy with anticipation as Class 1A boarded the buses bound for their training camp. While his classmates chattered excitedly about the upcoming week, Izuku sat quietly by a window, his attention split between the passing landscape and the time threads surrounding his peers. Hey, Midoriya, Kirishima called from across the aisle. You're being even quieter than usual. Something on your mind? Izuku offered a gentle smile. I'm observing the converging timelines. This trip represents a significant inflection point for our class. Inflection point? Kaminari asked, leaning over his seat. You mean like important stuff is going to happen? In a manner of speaking, Izuku replied. Experiences that catalyze growth often occur at time nexus points where multiple potential futures intersect. Most of his classmates exchanged confused glances, but Yaoyorozu nodded thoughtfully from her seat nearby. You're suggesting this training camp will be transformative for our development as heroes. Precisely, Izuku confirmed, meeting her perceptive gaze with appreciation. Of all his classmates, Yaoyorozu most consistently followed his theoretical explanations. After a deliberately misdirected journey designed by their teachers, Class 1A found themselves at the base of a forested mountain where the wild pussycats awaited them. Mandalay, the team's leader, explained that the students would need to travel through the beast's forest to reach the actual camp facility. The current time is 9:30 a.m., she announced cheerfully. If you're fast, you might make it by lunch. If not, well, you'll be hungry. Before anyone could respond, Pixie Bob, another pussycat member, used her Earthflow quirk to send the entire class tumbling down the mountainside. Students yelled in surprise as they were unceremoniously deposited at the forest's edge. That was dangerous, Ida protested, adjusting his glasses as he recovered. Welcome to the real world of hero work, Mandalay called down. Nothing's ever convenient or safe. See you at camp, if you make it. As the class gathered themselves, Pixie Bob's quirk activated again, causing the earth to tremble. From the disturbed ground emerged dozens of earthen creatures. Earth beasts created by her power to challenge the students. More robots? Sero asked, preparing his tape. Not quite, Izuku observed. These are earth manipulated by Pixie Bob's quirk. They don't have conventional mechanical weaknesses, and they'll reform when broken. So what's the plan? Uraraka asked as the creatures advanced. Cooperation, Izuku replied simply. This is a test of our collective capability, not individual strength. As the Earth Beasts attacked, the class found themselves forced to work together in ways their previous training hadn't required. Bakugo and Todoroki provided offensive power, while Yaoyorozu created weapons and supplies for those with less combat-oriented quirks. Ida coordinated movement, and Uraraka used her gravity manipulation to provide tactical advantages. Izuku, for his part, remained curiously passive. Rather than unleashing his time abilities to easily dispatch the threats, he observed his classmates with the analytical eye of an instructor. Kaminari, he called out as an earth beast flanked the electric user. Your discharge pattern creates a predictable blind spot at your 7 o'clock position. My what? Kaminari turned just in time to see the creature lunging. Whoa! Before it could strike, Izuku briefly accelerated his time stream, appearing beside Kaminari to redirect the attack with a precise gesture. Adjust your output distribution to create a more balanced field, Izuku suggested, like this. He traced a pattern in the air that Kaminari could follow. Across the battlefield, Izuku continued this approach, offering tactical suggestions, pointing out weaknesses in technique, and occasionally demonstrating more efficient applications. When Ashido's acid spray pattern left gaps in her defense, he showed her a circular motion that maximized coverage. When Kirishima's hardening began to falter under sustained attacks, Izuku suggested rhythmic activation patterns to extend his endurance. Why aren't you just stopping time and taking these things out? Bakugo demanded after obliterating another Earth Beast with an explosion. We all know you could end this in seconds. Because that wouldn't benefit anyone's development, Izuku replied calmly. This exercise isn't about reaching the destination quickly, it's about growing through the journey. Bakugo scowled, but couldn't argue with the logic. For the next 4 hours, Class 1A fought their way through the forest. Though Izuku could have easily transported everyone to the camp instantly, he instead guided his classmates through the challenge, offering advice and occasional assistance while encouraging them to find their own solutions. By mid-afternoon, exhausted but triumphant, the class finally reached the training facility where Aizawa and the Pussycats awaited. Not bad, Aizawa commented as they arrived, though I expected you might arrive sooner. His gaze lingered on Izuku, who simply smiled. Some journeys are valuable precisely because of the time they take. After a quick meal and brief rest, the real training began. The Pussycats explained that the camp's primary purpose was quirk strengthening, pushing each student's abilities beyond their current limits through intense, focused exercises. Think of your quirks like muscles, Mandalay explained. They grow stronger through controlled strain and recovery. Each student was assigned personalized training based on their specific quirk. Bakugo was tasked with continuously creating explosions until his arms gave out. Todoroki had to generate extreme hot and cold simultaneously until exhaustion. Uraraka needed to maintain zero gravity on increasingly heavy objects for extended periods. When Aizawa approached Izuku, he seemed momentarily uncertain. Midoriya, your case presents a unique challenge. The nature of your ability doesn't conform to conventional quirk strengthening methods. I have some ideas, Izuku offered, if you'll permit me to design my own regimen. Aizawa studied him carefully before nodding. Proposal? Precision training, Izuku explained. My time manipulation operates at a macro scale effectively, but I'd like to refine my control at the molecular and atomic levels. The ability to selectively manipulate time for individual particles could have significant applications for rescue operations and non-combat scenarios. That's not what I expected, Aizawa admitted. I thought you might focus on expanding your range or power output. Brute force is rarely the optimal solution, Izuku replied. Precision often accomplishes what raw power cannot. With approval granted, Izuku established his training area at the edge of the facility, where he could work without distraction. While his classmates pushed their quirks through exhausting repetition, Izuku sat in quiet meditation, golden light occasionally flickering around his fingertips as he manipulated time at increasingly minute scales. By evening, most students had collapsed from exhaustion, their quirks temporarily depleted. As they recovered during dinner, conversation turned to comparing their progress. "I increased my explosion output by almost 8%, Bakugo announced, rubbing his aching arms. "My ice formation speed improved noticeably," Todoroki added quietly. "What about you, Midoriya?" Uraraka asked. "We couldn't really see what you were doing all day." Izuku held up a leaf he had collected. "Observe." Golden light illuminated his fingertip as he touched one edge of the leaf. The color began to change, not all at once, but one cell at a time, a precise line of autumn red spreading through the green tissue as he selectively accelerated time for individual cells. "I can now manipulate time with cellular precision," he explained, accelerating, decelerating, or freezing time flow for individual biological components while leaving surrounding structures unaffected. The demonstration left his classmates momentarily speechless. "That's incredibly precise control," Yaoyorozu finally observed, her eyes reflecting genuine admiration. "The applications for such fine manipulation are extensive." "Indeed," Izuku agreed, meeting her gaze. "I'm particularly interested in medical applications. The potential to selectively accelerate healing for damaged tissues while preventing cellular degradation in surrounding areas." As evening transitioned to night and students prepared for bed, Izuku found himself approached by Aizawa once more. "A word, Midoriya," the teacher requested, leading him to a quiet corner of the facility. "Is something concerning you, Aizawa-sensei?" Izuku asked once they were alone. "Your approach to training," Aizawa began. "It's unconventional. Most students at your level focus on raw power development." "I already possess sufficient raw power for most scenarios," Izuku replied. "Refinement offers greater utility than simple amplification." Aizawa studied him with that penetrating gaze that had intimidated so many students. "You weren't really training today, were you? At least, not in the way the others were." "I was," Izuku countered, "just not exclusively for myself." Understanding dawned in Aizawa's eyes. "You were observing everyone else's quirks, studying them." Izuku nodded. "Every quirk represents a fascinating variation in how reality can be manipulated. Observing these variations provides insight into the fundamental nature of abilities themselves." "You sound like a researcher rather than a hero in training," Aizawa noted. "Is there a reason one cannot be both?" Izuku asked with a small smile. "Understanding precedes mastery, and mastery enables more effective heroism." Aizawa considered this before changing the subject. "The forest surrounding this facility is extensive. Surveillance has limitations. Your time perception... Can you sense any anomalies in our vicinity?" Izuku closed his eyes briefly, extending his awareness into the surrounding timelines. "Nothing immediate," he replied after a moment, "though there are minor disturbances approximately 12 kilometers southeast, time signatures suggesting human movement where there should be none." "How many?" "Difficult to determine precisely at this distance, between 8 and 12 individuals based on timeline disruption patterns." Aizawa's expression darkened. "We received intelligence suggesting the League of Villains might target this training camp. Your confirmation is concerning." "They won't act tonight," Izuku assured him. "The time convergence points indicate action most likely tomorrow evening, possibly triggered by our scheduled test of courage activity." "You can predict that specifically?" Aizawa asked, unable to fully mask his surprise. "Probability analysis based on time pattern recognition," Izuku explained. "Not certainty, but high likelihood." Aizawa contemplated this information. "We should alter our plans, perhaps evacuate." "Or prepare appropriately," Izuku suggested. "This situation presents an opportunity to neutralize multiple threats simultaneously in a controlled environment. With proper preparation, we can ensure student safety while apprehending dangerous individuals." Aizawa's eyes narrowed. "You're proposing we use the students as bait." "Not at all," Izuku corrected. "I'm suggesting we maintain the appearance of normal activities while implementing enhanced security measures. The students continue their training, benefiting from the experience, while we prepare specifically for the anticipated threat." After further discussion, they reached a compromise. The camp schedule would proceed as planned, but with additional precautions implemented discreetly. Pro heroes from nearby areas would be quietly alerted, and Izuku would maintain regular time monitoring of the surrounding forest. The following day proceeded with intensified training. Students pushed their quirks further, building on the previous day's foundation. Izuku continued his precision exercises while occasionally offering guidance to classmates who sought his advice. By late afternoon, Izuku approached Aizawa privately. The time disturbances have increased. They're moving into position around the perimeter, approximately 3 to 4 kilometers out. Numbers? 12 distinct signatures, Izuku confirmed, including 2 with particularly unusual time patterns, one suggesting artificial enhancement beyond normal human capability, the other indicating significant psychic instability. Aizawa nodded grimly. That matches our intelligence on the League's recent recruits. Reinforcements will be in position within the hour. As twilight approached, the scheduled test of courage began. Students were paired and sent into the darkened forest at staggered intervals, tasked with collecting stamps while enduring scary surprises prepared by Class 1B. Izuku, paired with Yaoyorozu, waited near the back of the line. Your time signature indicates elevated anxiety, he observed quietly. She smiled ruefully. Is it that obvious? I've never been comfortable with haunted house scenarios. Fear responses are natural protective mechanisms, Izuku replied, though in this case, perhaps justified beyond the intended exercise. Yaoyorozu's perceptive gaze sharpened. You know something. Time anomalies suggesting unauthorized presence in the surrounding forest, he confirmed in a low voice. Aizawa-sensei is aware and countermeasures are in place. Her eyes widened slightly before her expression settled into determined focus. What can I do? Create small communication devices, Izuku suggested. Discreetly distribute them to our classmates as they depart. I've established a time monitoring field around the entire forest. I'll know the moment any hostile action begins. With efficient precision, Yaoyorozu created miniature earpieces that were subtly passed to each student team before they entered the forest. When their turn came, Izuku and Yaoyorozu walked calmly into the darkened path. 3 minutes until contact, Izuku stated once they were alone. The League has begun moving inward from multiple directions. Should we warn everyone now? Yaoyorozu asked, creating a small flashlight. Not yet, Izuku replied. Panic would create confusion that might be exploited. Better to wait until... He stopped abruptly, golden light flaring briefly in his eyes. Time distortion expanding rapidly from the central forest, some form of gaseous quirk activation. Through their distributed communication devices, Izuku addressed all classmates simultaneously. Attention Class 1A, hostile presence detected. A paralytic gas is spreading through the forest. Hold your breath and proceed to these coordinates. As he transmitted location data for a safe gathering point, screams erupted from different directions throughout the forest. The attack had begun. We should help the others, Yaoyorozu said, already creating gas masks for herself and Izuku. Indeed, Izuku agreed, accepting the mask, though not in the conventional manner. He placed his hand gently on her shoulder. Chrono Corridor. Golden light enveloped them both as Izuku created a time pathway connecting their current location to the gathering point he had designated. They stepped through, instantly traversing the distance that would have taken minutes to cover on foot. At the gathering point, a small clearing away from the spreading gas, Izuku expanded his time field. Time dilation. Area effect. The air shimmered with golden light as time around them slowed to a fraction of its normal flow. Within their protected bubble, Izuku and Yaoyorozu could speak and move normally, while the outside world, including the spreading gas, moved at an imperceptible crawl. I've established a time-safe zone, Izuku explained. Now we can retrieve our classmates without risk from the gas or immediate villain intervention. How can I help? Yaoyorozu asked, already creating additional supplies. Create tracking devices, Izuku suggested. I'll establish time corridors to each student's location, but navigation efficiency increases with precise coordinates. Working together with seamless coordination, they began extracting their classmates. Izuku would create a golden pathway through folded time, step through to a student's location, and return with them to the safe zone, all while maintaining the time field that kept the gas and villains effectively frozen in their perception, Within what felt like hours to them, but mere seconds to the outside world, they had retrieved most of Class 1A and several members of Class 1B who had been caught in the attack. Bakugo and Todoroki are still missing, Ida reported after Izuku brought him through a time corridor. They were paired together for the test. Izuku nodded, closing his eyes briefly to scan the surrounding timelines. I sense them, but there's interference. Someone with a warp quirk is attempting to create a dimensional passage near their location. They're targets, Yaoyorozu realized. The League is specifically after them. Indeed, Izuku confirmed. Their time signatures are being artificially isolated. Someone is attempting to remove them from the natural time stream. He turned to address the gathered students. Remain here. The time field will protect you from both the gas and direct attacks. Yaoyorozu will coordinate defense if needed. Where are you going? Kirishima asked. To ensure our classmates aren't abducted, Izuku replied simply. Before anyone could protest, he accelerated his personal time stream to such a degree that he effectively vanished from their perception. Moving at this speed, the world around him appeared completely frozen, gas particles suspended in air, forest creatures paused mid-movement, even light itself seeming to crawl along its path. He navigated through the time-frozen forest with practiced ease, following the time distortion until he located Bakugo and Todoroki. They stood back to back, Todoroki's ice creating a dome to protect them from the gas, while Bakugo's explosions kept attackers at bay. Around them, 5 villains had them surrounded, including a masked figure generating some form of warp gate. Izuku studied the scene with calm analysis. The villains were attempting to isolate and capture his classmates, likely on orders from the League's leadership. The warp gate was specifically designed to transport targets against their will, an interesting variation on standard teleportation quirks. Time restoration, Izuku murmured, touching the edge of the forming warp gate. Golden light spread through the dimensional distortion, neutralizing its effect by returning the spatial time coordinates to their natural state. The masked villain's quirk effectively canceled. The warp gate collapsed in on itself. Izuku then approached each villain in turn, studying their frozen forms with scholarly interest. One controlled magnetism, another generated compressed gas, the third manipulated muscle mass, the fourth created dimensional pockets, and the fifth, the leader, possessed some form of decay quirk that disintegrated matter on contact. Fascinating variations, Izuku noted as he placed a hand on each villain in turn. Chronostasis, individual suspension. Rather than maintain his accelerated state, which required continuous energy expenditure, Izuku placed each villain in a personal time prison, freezing them in time while allowing the rest of the world to resume normal flow. Each attacker became encased in a golden stasis field, perfectly preserved in the moment of their assault. With the immediate threat neutralized, Izuku returned his time stream to normal synchronization, appearing beside his classmates. Midoriya? Todoroki asked, surprise evident despite his usual stoic expression. What the hell? Bakugo added, staring at the time-frozen villains. You were targeted for abduction, Izuku explained calmly. I've neutralized the immediate threat. We should return to the others. I don't need your protection, Bakugo growled, though with less conviction than usual as he eyed the frozen attackers. Perhaps not, Izuku acknowledged, but efficiency suggests combined resources are preferable to individual effort in this scenario. Before further discussion could occur, Izuku sensed another time distortion, larger and more powerful than before, approaching rapidly. Something comes, he warned, turning toward the disturbance. Through the trees emerged a massive figure, muscular, with exposed brain tissue and multiple eyes embedded in abnormal positions throughout its body. Its time signature was chaotic, suggesting multiple quirks forcibly integrated into a single organism. Another Nomu, Izuku observed. Though more advanced than those at USJ, the time integration of its quirks shows greater sophistication. The creature roared and charged with devastating speed, covering the distance between them in seconds. Bakugo prepared an explosion while Todoroki summoned flames and ice, but both found themselves gently moved aside as Izuku stepped forward. Allow me, he said simply. As the Nomu reached him, Izuku raised his hand. Chrono analysis. Golden light spread from his palm, enveloping the creature in a scanning field that revealed its time structure. Unlike normal beings with single, coherent timelines, this Nomu possessed multiple overlapping time signatures, evidence of the numerous quirks and donor individuals incorporated into its creation. 6 distinct quirk signatures, Izuku noted aloud. Super strength, shock absorption, regeneration, sensory enhancement, kinetic redirection, and some form of acid production. Fascinating integration. The Nomu swung a massive fist toward Izuku, who didn't attempt to dodge. Instead, he simply accelerated the time stream around the attack, causing the punch to move so slowly it appeared nearly stationary. The creation process for these beings represents significant bioengineering advancement, Izuku continued, his analytical focus unbroken despite the battle. Though ethically reprehensible, the technical achievement is noteworthy. With careful precision, Izuku placed his hand directly on the Nomu's exposed brain tissue. Chrono extraction. Unlike his previous encounters with villains, where he typically used time stasis to simply immobilize opponents, Izuku now employed a more fundamental technique. Golden light intensified around his hand as he began systematically extracting the accumulated time from each quirk within the Nomu. The creature trembled, its muscles spasming as Izuku methodically separated the time signatures of each integrated quirk, absorbing their energy into himself while leaving the biological material intact. "What are you doing to it?" Todoroki asked, watching as the Nomu gradually lost its aggressive posture, its body seeming to deflate and weaken. Extracting the time energy from its quirks, Izuku explained without interrupting his process. Each ability represents accumulated time, the lifespan of development and activation potential. By absorbing this time, I neutralize the quirks while preserving the baseline biological structure. Within minutes, what had been a terrifying artificial weapon stood docile and weakened, its multiple quirks reduced to dormant potential rather than active abilities. The exposed brain tissue, once pulsing with unnatural energy, now appeared ordinary, simply malformed rather than superpowered. "That's disturbing," Todoroki observed quietly. "You can disable quirks permanently?" Bakugo asked, his usual aggression tempered by unexpected wariness. "Not permanently," Izuku clarified, releasing the now harmless Nomu. "I've extracted the accumulated time energy, the power built up over time. The base quirk factors remain, but in a dormant state that will require significant recovery time to regenerate." He turned toward his classmates. "We should return to the others. The League likely has additional forces in the area." As they made their way back to the clearing where the other students waited, protected by Izuku's time field, Bakugo's curiosity overcame his pride. "That energy you took from the Nomu," he began hesitantly. "What happens to it?" "It's converted to time power that I can utilize," Izuku explained. "Similar to how your body processes food into energy, though on a more fundamental level. The extracted time becomes a resource for my own abilities." So you get stronger by taking other people's power?" Bakugo pressed, his tone suggesting he wasn't sure whether to be impressed or disturbed. "I absorb time energy, not quirks themselves," Izuku corrected. "Though the distinction may seem academic, it's fundamentally different from quirk stealing, so I don't take abilities, merely the accumulated time associated with them." When they reached the clearing, they found the situation well in hand. Yaoyorozu had organized the students into defensive formations, created weapons and supplies as needed, and established communication with the pro-heroes who had arrived as reinforcements. "Midoriya," she called with evident relief as they emerged from the forest. The time field held perfectly. No villains were able to penetrate it. "Excellent work with the defensive coordination," Izuku replied, noting the efficient arrangement she had established. "Your strategic application continues to impress." As Aizawa and the other pro-heroes secured the area and began processing the time-frozen villains Izuku had captured, the immediate crisis passed. Medical teams arrived to treat injured students, while police established a perimeter around the facility. Later that evening, as students recovered in the main building, Izuku found himself summoned to a makeshift command center, where Aizawa, All Might, and several high-ranking police officials had gathered. "Midoriya," Detective Tsukauchi greeted him. "We need your insight on what happened today." For the next hour, Izuku provided a detailed analysis of the attack, the villains' quirks, their tactical approach, the specialized Nomu, and the apparent objective to abduct specific students. Their primary targets were Bakugo and Todoroki, he concluded. The attack pattern suggests a larger strategic objective beyond simple terrorism. Recruitment, perhaps, All Might suggested in his deflated form. Shigaraki has been building his forces. More likely research subjects, Izuku countered. The time signatures I observed in the Nomu suggest extensive experimentation with quirk integration. Powerful students with well-developed abilities would provide valuable research material. The implication hung heavily in the room. Someone was creating these biological weapons, and that someone needed test subjects with exceptional quirks. There's something else, Izuku added after a moment. During my time scanning, I detected a distant signature of significant magnitude, far greater than any individual present during the attack, an ancient time pattern suggesting accumulated experience spanning centuries rather than decades. All Might tensed visibly. Where? Approximately 200 kilometers southeast, Izuku replied, though the signature was briefly present, then disappeared, suggesting either extreme distance or some method of time concealment. Tsukauchi and All Might exchanged meaningful glances. All for one, the detective muttered. You know this entity? Izuku asked, though his tone suggested he'd already deduced the answer. Japan's most dangerous villain, Aizawa explained grimly. Supposedly defeated years ago, but rumors of his return have persisted. His time signature is unlike anything I've encountered, Izuku noted. Multiple overlapping time streams, hundreds of quirk signatures compressed into a single entity, and an age pattern suggesting lifespan far beyond normal human limitations. He can steal and bestow quirks, All Might explained quietly. He's accumulated power for generations, possibly centuries. Izuku's eyes gleamed with genuine interest. Fascinating, a quirk that directly manipulates the fundamental connection between abilities and their users. The time implications are extraordinary. The pro-heroes seemed taken aback by his scholarly fascination rather than fear. This isn't an academic exercise, Midoriya, Aizawa warned. All for One represents an existential threat to hero society itself. Every threat is also an opportunity for understanding, Izuku replied calmly. His quirk may provide insight into the fundamental nature of abilities themselves, knowledge that could advance our comprehension of quirk science by generations. Before further discussion could occur, an alert sounded from Tsukauchi's phone. His expression darkened as he read the message. Multiple villain attacks reported across Kamino Ward, he announced, including a confirmed sighting of the League of Villains leadership. All Might stood immediately. I need to go. Wait, Izuku interrupted. The timing is suspicious. This could be a deliberate distraction while their real objective unfolds elsewhere. What do you suggest? Tsukauchi asked. A two-pronged approach, Izuku replied. Visible response to the Kamino incidents to maintain public confidence, while a secondary team investigates the time anomaly I detected. The probability of correlation between these events is extremely high. After further discussion, a plan was established. All Might would lead the public response in Kamino alongside other top heroes, while a smaller team including Aizawa and several specialized operatives would investigate the location Izuku had identified as the source of the time disturbance. I should accompany the investigation team, Izuku stated rather than suggested. Absolutely not, Aizawa responded immediately. You're still a student, regardless of your abilities. A student with unique time perception that could prove essential for locating the anomaly source, Izuku countered. Without my guidance, you might search for days without finding what generates that signature. The logic was irrefutable, though Aizawa remained deeply reluctant. Eventually, a compromise was reached. Izuku would provide remote guidance through a secure communication channel while remaining with the other students under the protection of the remaining pro-heroes. As the meeting concluded and the various teams departed for their assignments, Izuku returned to the main building where his classmates were recovering. He found Yaoyorozu waiting near the entrance, her expression conveying both relief and concern. The time disturbance extends beyond this isolated attack, she deduced immediately upon seeing his face. Indeed, Izuku confirmed, events are accelerating toward a convergence point I've been monitoring for some time. Is there anything I can do? She asked. Izuku considered her question with genuine thoughtfulness. Your creation ability has nearly limitless applications with sufficient material and knowledge. Perhaps we should discuss theoretical countermeasures for various quirk categories, particularly those involving dimensional manipulation or biological enhancement. For the next several hours, while their classmates rested and the investigation teams pursued their respective targets, Izuku and Yaoyorozu engaged in detailed strategic planning. Her ability to create any non-living material, combined with his time insight, produced dozens of specialized countermeasures for potential future encounters. Your quirk's versatility is truly remarkable, Izuku observed, as Yaoyorozu demonstrated a molecular damper she had designed based on his theoretical specifications. The ability to manifest physical matter from biological energy represents one of the most fundamental manipulations of natural law I've encountered. You make it sound more impressive than it feels, she replied with a modest smile. Compared to controlling time itself, creation seems rather straightforward. On the contrary, Izuku countered, time manipulation merely adjusts the progression of existing elements. Creation brings new elements into existence, a far more fundamental alteration of reality. Their theoretical discussion was interrupted by an urgent alert from Izuku's communication device. Tsukauchi's voice came through, tense and urgent. Midoriya, we've lost contact with All Might's team in Kamino. Simultaneously, Aizawa's team has located a facility matching your time description, but they're encountering significant resistance. The events are connected, Izuku confirmed, his expression growing serious. The Kamino operation was indeed a diversion, but one designed specifically to separate All Might from the investigation team. We're mobilizing additional heroes, but response time will be at least 20 minutes. Tsukauchi continued. Can you provide any guidance remotely? Izuku closed his eyes briefly, extending his time perception to its limits. The convergence has begun. Multiple significant timelines are intersecting at both locations simultaneously. This isn't coincidence, it's orchestrated. What does that mean? Tsukauchi pressed. It means All for One has been anticipating this confrontation, Izuku replied grimly. Possibly for years. The time patterns suggest extensive preparation specifically designed to isolate key heroes and create maximum vulnerability. Yaoyorozu, who had been listening intently, spoke up. Can you establish a time corridor between locations? Transport reinforcements instantly? Not at this distance without prior spatial mapping, Izuku explained. Time corridors require either direct line of sight or previously established reference points. A moment of tense silence followed as Izuku considered their options. Then, decisively, I need to go there physically. Absolutely not, Tsukauchi responded immediately. The risk of inaction is far greater, Izuku interrupted. Based on time probability mapping, All Might's life signature shows significant instability in the immediate future. Without intervention, the likelihood of his survival drops below 30% within the next hour. The silence that followed carried the weight of terrible understanding. All Might, the symbol of peace, Japan's greatest hero, stood on the precipice of defeat. How quickly can you reach Kamino? Tsukauchi finally asked. With targeted time acceleration, approximately 12 minutes, Izuku replied. Though maintaining that speed will temporarily deplete my reserves. Do it, Tsukauchi authorized. I'll take responsibility with UA. Izuku turned to Yaoyorozu, who was already creating something in her palm, a small tracking device. Take this, she said, handing him the compact beacon. It will allow me to pinpoint your location precisely, regardless of distance. Izuku accepted it with a nod of appreciation. Monitor the students here. If the League attempts a secondary attack while the pros are distracted, your strategic thinking will be essential. Be careful, she added quietly as he prepared to depart. Izuku offered a reassuring smile. Time is on my side. With that, he stepped outside and accelerated his personal time stream to an extreme degree. Golden light surrounded his body as he moved at speeds that made the world around him appear frozen. Even light itself seemed to crawl as he raced toward Kamino Ward, covering ground at a pace that would make even the fastest quirk users seem stationary by comparison. As he ran, Izuku prepared himself mentally for what lay ahead. The time signatures he had sensed suggested an entity of unprecedented power, someone who had accumulated abilities and experience across generations. All for One was not merely a villain. He was an existential challenge to the very concept of heroism itself. And for the first time since arriving at UA, Izuku would need to unleash his full capabilities, not as a student demonstrating control, but as what he truly was, the reincarnation of the Wizard King, master of time itself, facing an enemy who had transcended normal human limitations through entirely different means. The stage was set for a confrontation between two beings who had both, in their own ways, overcome the fundamental constraints of mortality, one through the accumulated power of stolen quirks spanning centuries, the other through the reincarnated knowledge and power of a previous existence. As Kamino Ward appeared on the horizon, Izuku sensed the time distortion intensifying. Multiple futures converged on this moment, a true nexus point in history where the course of hero society itself would be determined. Fascinating, he murmured as he approached the epicenter of chaos. Truly fascinating. Kamino Ward resembled a war zone. Buildings lay in ruins, streets were cratered and broken, and fires burned across the district. As Izuku arrived at the scene, decelerating from his time sprint, he immediately assessed the situation with practiced tactical precision. Multiple pro heroes were scattered across the battlefield, many unconscious or injured. Civilians had largely been evacuated, though rescue operations continued at the perimeter. And at the center of the destruction stood two figures locked in desperate combat. All Might, his heroic form visibly weakening, faced off against a man whose very presence distorted the surrounding time streams. Even from a distance, Izuku could sense the time anomaly, hundreds of quirks compressed into a single entity, creating a chaotic overlay of conflicting signatures, all for one. The villain's appearance was disturbing, his face featureless except for a complex life support apparatus, his body unnaturally proportioned as if composed of mismatched parts. When he moved, reality itself seemed to warp around him, space and time bending in unnatural ways. "You've reached your limit, All Might," All for One's voice carried across the battlefield, amplified by some quirk that made the very air vibrate. "The symbol of peace dies today." All Might, bloodied but unbowed, launched another attack. "Not while I still stand!" Their clash created a shockwave that shattered windows for blocks. All Might's incredible strength met All for One's combination of quirks, impact nullification, force multiplication, kinetic redirection, and others Izuku couldn't immediately identify. The outcome was painfully clear. All Might was losing. His power, already depleted from years of injury and overuse, was fading rapidly against an opponent who seemed to have an endless arsenal of abilities. Izuku observed for precisely 3.2 seconds, cataloging every aspect of the confrontation. Then he acted. Chronostasis, battlefield suspension. Golden light erupted from his extended hands, expanding outward in a perfect sphere that encompassed the entire combat zone. Within this time field, everything slowed to near standstill. Debris hung in midair, flames froze in their flickering patterns, and the combatants themselves became virtually motionless. Only Izuku moved normally, walking calmly through the time-frozen battlefield toward the central confrontation. He passed injured heroes, making brief contact with each to place them in protective time bubbles that would accelerate their healing while shielding them from further harm. When he reached All Might, Izuku carefully examined his mentor's condition. The damage was extensive. Multiple fractures, internal hemorrhaging, and most critically, the almost complete depletion of One for All's remaining embers. All Might had perhaps minutes of power left, not nearly enough to defeat his ancient enemy. "Fascinating," Izuku murmured as he turned his attention to All for One. The villain was partially resistant to the time stasis, his body moving with glacial slowness rather than freezing completely. Time resistance quirk, likely acquired specifically as a countermeasure for time-based abilities. As Izuku approached, All for One's head turned fractionally toward him, awareness evident despite the extreme time dilation. "You perceive me." The villain's words emerged with agonizing slowness, each syllable taking seconds to form. "Indeed," Izuku replied conversationally. "Your quirk collection includes time resistance, impressive foresight to acquire such a specialized ability." With clinical detachment, Izuku examined All for One more closely. The villain's time signature was unlike anything he had encountered. A chaotic tapestry of overlapping timelines, each representing a stolen quirk with its own history and development path. Over 200 distinct quirk signatures, Izuku noted aloud. Some dating back centuries, others acquired recently. The time integration is remarkably sophisticated, though fundamentally flawed in its implementation. All for One's resistance to the time field gradually increased, his movements accelerating from glacial to merely extremely slow. "Who are you?" he managed to ask. "Someone with a professional interest in time mechanics," Izuku replied simply. "Your accumulation of power across generations has created a uniquely unstable time pattern, fascinating from a theoretical perspective, though catastrophically destructive in practical application." Understanding that the stasis field wouldn't hold All for One indefinitely, Izuku made his decision. He turned back to All Might, placing both hands on his mentor's chest. Time restoration, temporary reversal. Golden light spread from Izuku's palms throughout All Might's body, reversing the immediate damage from the battle. Broken bones knit, torn tissue mended, and exhausted muscles rejuvenated as Izuku selectively rewound All Might's personal timeline to a state before the devastating injuries. "This is temporary," Izuku explained, though he knew All Might couldn't hear him within the stasis field. "A localized reversal that will grant you approximately 30 minutes of restored function. Use it wisely." With All Might temporarily restored, Izuku returned his attention to All for One, who had now accelerated his resistance to move at roughly 1/10 normal speed, still severely hampered but increasingly aware. "Your time quirk, unusual," the villain observed. "Not native to this world." Izuku raised an eyebrow, genuinely impressed. "Your perception is remarkably accurate despite the time distortion. Yes, my abilities originate from principles beyond this world's conventional quirk framework." All for One's masked face turned fully toward him, attention now completely focused on Izuku rather than All Might. "I must have it." "A fascinating proposal," Izuku replied with academic interest, "though fundamentally impossible. My abilities aren't quirk-based in the conventional sense. They're an intrinsic aspect of my reincarnated existence. You could no more steal them than you could steal someone's consciousness itself." As he spoke, Izuku began a more detailed time analysis of All for One's quirk structure. Beneath the chaotic surface of stolen abilities lay the original quirk, the power to take and bestow abilities, which formed the foundation of the villain's existence. "Your core quirk represents perhaps the most significant manipulation of biological essence in this world's history," Izuku observed. "The ability to transfer quirk factors between individuals suggests that abilities themselves have a transferable, quasi-physical nature independent of genetic expression." Remarkable. All for One had now accelerated to approximately 1/5 normal speed, his resistance to the time stasis growing stronger through some combination of quirks Izuku couldn't immediately identify. "You speak like researcher," the villain noted. "Knowledge precedes action," Izuku replied. "Understanding your nature allows me to address you more effectively." With careful precision, Izuku placed his palm directly on All for One's chest. Chronoanalysis, deep scanning. Golden light spread from his hand, penetrating the villain's body and illuminating the complex network of quirks that composed his existence. Each ability appeared as a distinct time signature, interconnected yet fundamentally separate, a collection rather than a true integration. "As I suspected," Izuku murmured, "your quirk accumulation method creates inherent instability. Each ability maintains its original time signature rather than truly merging with your base existence. Efficient for acquisition but suboptimal for harmonious function." All for One's resistance suddenly spiked, his movement accelerating to nearly half normal speed as he activated multiple quirks simultaneously. "Enough. Analysis," he growled, raising a hand toward Izuku. "Give me your power." "A common misconception," Izuku replied calmly, stepping back from the increasingly mobile villain. "Power isn't something to be taken, it's something to be understood." Deciding that further study would require a more controlled environment, Izuku released the battlefield stasis field while maintaining a smaller time bubble around himself and the two combatants. Time resumed its normal flow for the surrounding area while remaining slightly slowed within their immediate vicinity. All Might, now temporarily restored by Izuku's intervention, found himself suddenly rejuvenated. He stared at his hands in confusion, then at Izuku. "Young Midoriya, what have you?" 30 minutes of restored function," Izuku explained quickly. Use it strategically, not recklessly. I've analyzed his quirk structure and identified several critical vulnerabilities. All for One, now moving at nearly normal speed within the localized field, laughed, a hollow, mechanical sound through his mask. The famous time wizard student. I should have recognized your time signature earlier. How fortunate that you've delivered yourself to me. A common misinterpretation of the situation, Izuku replied, his tone remaining conversational despite the tension. I haven't delivered myself to you. I've positioned myself to study you more effectively. The villain's body began to transform, arms bulking with augmentation quirks, while additional appendages sprouted from his torso. Your arrogance exceeds even All Might's. I've existed for centuries, child. I've witnessed the rise and fall of countless heroes who believed themselves invincible. Longevity without wisdom is merely extended ignorance, Izuku countered. Your time signature reveals a fundamental flaw in your approach. You collect power without truly understanding it. All for One launched his attack, a devastating combination of air pressure, kinetic amplification, and some form of disintegration quirk. The assault moved with surprising speed despite the time field, suggesting yet another quirk specifically designed to counteract time manipulation. Izuku didn't attempt to dodge. Instead, he raised one hand casually. Time division. The incoming attack split into its component elements, each one redirected along a different time vector. The air pressure dissipated harmlessly, the kinetic force folded back on itself, and the disintegration effect simply vanished, removed from the current time stream entirely. Interesting defensive application, All for One observed, his initial surprise quickly replaced by analytical assessment. Not simple nullification, but time redirection. Correct, Izuku acknowledged. Rather than counterforce with force, I simply adjust when and where the energy exists. All Might, seizing the opening, launched his own attack, a devastating Detroit smash aimed at All for One's life support apparatus. The villain blocked with multiple defensive quirks, but the impact still drove him backward through several already damaged buildings. All Might, Izuku said calmly as the hero prepared to pursue. His quirk collection includes at least 6 different countertypes specifically designed to neutralize impact-based attacks. Direct confrontation is suboptimal. What do you suggest? All Might asked, not taking his eyes off the villain's position. Coordination, Izuku replied. His time resistance is specifically calibrated against standardized time manipulation. I'll employ non-standard variants to create openings. You exploit them with precisely targeted attacks. All Might nodded, some part of him recognizing that in this moment their traditional roles had reversed. The student was now directing the teacher. All for One emerged from the rubble, his mask cracked but his stance undiminished. Impressive coordination. The symbol of peace and his time protege. How touching. Your rhetorical attempts to create emotional distraction are inefficient, Izuku noted. A better allocation of your cognitive resources would be adapting your quirk deployment to our combined approach. The clinical assessment seemed to genuinely irritate All for One, whose next attack came with greater intensity. A barrage of quirks activated simultaneously to create a devastating combination of elemental, kinetic, and dimensional effects. Chronofragmentation, Izuku responded, creating a field that separated the attack into discrete time segments, each one occurring slightly out of phase with reality. In the momentary opening this created, All Might launched forward, adjusting his attack pattern based on Izuku's guidance. Rather than his usual direct approach, he delivered a series of precision strikes targeting specific points on All for One's body, where quirk signatures converged. The coordinated assault continued for several minutes, with Izuku using increasingly sophisticated time techniques to counter All for One's vast quirk arsenal, while All Might exploited each opening with devastating effectiveness. Yet, despite their coordination, the villain's resilience was astonishing. Each time he seemed on the verge of defeat, he would activate some new combination of quirks to recover. His regenerative capabilities are impressive, Izuku observed after a particularly devastating exchange, though the time cost is significant. Each major healing depletes his accumulated time span. Meaning? All Might asked, breathing heavily despite his temporarily restored condition. He's burning through his reserves, Izuku explained. Every quirk activation draws on accumulated time energy. At his current expenditure rate, total depletion will occur in approximately 7 minutes. All for One, overhearing this analysis, laughed darkly. Perceptive, but incomplete. You failed to account for my energy absorption quirks. As if to demonstrate, the villain extended his hand toward a nearby pro-hero who lay unconscious at the battlefield's edge. A dark energy connected them briefly, and the hero's body seemed to wither slightly as All for One visibly strengthened. Life force extraction, Izuku identified immediately. Relatively crude compared to time absorption, but effective for emergency replenishment. Before All for One could drain the hero further, Izuku gestured sharply. Time isolation. A golden barrier appeared around the fallen hero, severing the connection. All for One turned his attention back to Izuku, genuine interest evident in his posture. Your command of time mechanics exceeds reports, the villain acknowledged. The government has kept your true capabilities quite secret, it seems. Bureaucratic caution, Izuku replied with a slight shrug, though in this case perhaps justified. All Might, whose temporary restoration was beginning to fade, stepped forward. We need to end this quickly, young Midoriya. Civilians remain at risk the longer this battle continues. Izuku nodded, having reached the same conclusion. I'll create an opening for a decisive strike. Be prepared to commit your remaining power. Turning his full attention to All for One, Izuku adopted a more serious stance. The time for analysis had passed. Now was the moment for decisive action. Chrono regression. Area effect. Golden light erupted from Izuku's body, expanding outward in concentric rings that washed over the battlefield. Unlike his previous techniques, which manipulated the flow of time, this ability affected the structural integrity of time itself within the affected area. The space around All for One began to distort as time consistency broke down. The villain found his quirks behaving unpredictably, some activating prematurely, others delayed, all functioning at reduced efficiency, as the time foundation they operated upon became increasingly unstable. What is this? All for One demanded, genuine alarm entering his voice for the first time. What have you done to my quirks? I've destabilized the time framework within which they operate, Izuku explained calmly. Quirks, like all biological functions, require consistent time progression to function predictably. By introducing regression variables into the local time stream, I've created functional inconsistency in your ability activation patterns. The villain struggled against the effect, activating multiple stabilization quirks simultaneously. Impressive theory, he acknowledged, but ultimately futile. I've prepared countermeasures for every conceivable attack. Perhaps for every attack you could conceive, Izuku agreed, but your conception is limited by your understanding, which remains fundamentally incomplete. With precise timing, Izuku altered the time regression pattern, creating a momentary convergence point directly at All for One's core. Now, All Might. Understanding immediately, All Might gathered his remaining power, the last embers of One for All, amplified by Izuku's temporary restoration, and launched forward with devastating speed. United States of Smash! The hero's ultimate attack, perfectly synchronized with Izuku's time manipulation, struck All for One at the exact moment when the villain's defensive quirks experienced maximum instability. The impact was catastrophic, creating a shockwave that would have leveled city blocks had Izuku not immediately contained it within a time barrier. All for One's body crumpled under the combined assault, his mask shattered and his life support system critically damaged. As he collapsed, the chaotic swirl of quirk signatures within him fluctuated wildly, some beginning to dissipate as his control weakened. All Might, his power finally exhausted, reverted to his emaciated form, the temporary restoration completely depleted. He fell to one knee, gasping for breath but triumphant. It's over, he managed between labored breaths. Not quite. All for One wheezed, somehow still conscious despite his devastating injuries. Even in defeat, I leave a legacy. The villain's hand twitched, and suddenly dozens of quirk signatures began activating simultaneously within his body, not in coordinated attack, but in desperate, final defiance. The time patterns suggested some form of self-destruction protocol, a last attempt to take his enemies with him. Fascinating but predictable, Izuku observed, stepping forward while gesturing for All Might to move back. A contingency designed to release your accumulated power in catastrophic discharge. Can you stop it? All Might asked urgently, recognizing the imminent danger. "Better," Izuku replied, kneeling beside the fallen villain. "I can utilize it." Placing both hands directly on All for One's chest, Izuku activated his most sophisticated technique, one he had developed but never needed to employ until this moment. Chronoanastasis, complete absorption. Golden light enveloped both Izuku and All for One as the most fundamental time technique began. Unlike his previous absorption methods, which extracted specific energy from individual quirks, this was a comprehensive process. The systematic extraction of all accumulated time from every quirk, ability, and life force component within the villain's existence. All for One's body convulsed as centuries of stolen power, accumulated life force, and quirk energy began flowing into Izuku. The process created visible distortions in the air around them, reality itself straining under the massive time transfer. "What are doing?" All for One gasped, his voice weakening as his accumulated power, the very foundation of his extended existence, was systematically extracted. "Converting chaos to order," Izuku replied calmly, his voice remaining steady despite the enormous energy flowing through him. "Your accumulated power represents centuries of stolen time, lives interrupted, potentials hijacked, natural progression disrupted. I'm restoring time balance." As the process continued, All for One's body seemed to age rapidly, not decomposing but returning to its natural state without the stolen life force that had sustained it far beyond normal human limitations. Decades of artificial preservation reversed in minutes, revealing the true form of the man who had terrorized Japan for generations. "Fascinating," Izuku observed, even as he continued the absorption. "Your original lifespan should have ended approximately 107 years ago. Everything since has been artificially maintained through stolen life force." All Might watched in astonishment as his ancient enemy withered before his eyes, not through violence or destruction, but through the simple, inexorable restoration of natural time order. When the process finally completed, what remained of All for One was an elderly man, frail and human, his vast collection of quirks reduced to dormant potential rather than active power. He was alive, but completely neutralized. His body returned to its natural state with energy that had made him a nightmare. Izuku stood, golden light still surrounding his body as he integrated the massive time energy he had absorbed. His eyes glowed with power, countless quirk signatures briefly visible within his aura before being converted to pure time energy and absorbed into his core. "It's done," he stated simply. All Might stared at his student with a complex mixture of awe, gratitude, and something approaching wariness. "Young Midoriya, what exactly did you do to him?" "I extracted the accumulated time energy from his quirks and life force," Izuku explained. "Not the quirks themselves, those remain, though dormant, but the power that activated them. He's been returned to his natural state without the stolen time that sustained his unnatural existence." As police and heroes approached cautiously, Izuku's golden aura gradually subsided, the enormous energy he had absorbed integrating into his time core. The process had been taxing but controlled. Unlike his previous, smaller absorptions, this had required precise calibration to prevent time overflow. "He'll require specialized containment," Izuku advised as authorities secured the now elderly All for One. "Though his quirks are dormant, the potential remains. With sufficient time and resources, he might eventually regenerate some portion of his power." Detective Tsukauchi, arriving at the scene, coordinated the containment effort, while medics attended to All Might and the other injured heroes. The symbol of peace, though physically depleted, maintained a dignified presence as media began to arrive at the secured perimeter. Hours later, after All for One had been transported to a specialized containment facility and the immediate crisis addressed, Izuku found himself in a secure conference room with All Might, Principal Nezu, and several government officials. The official statement will describe All Might's victory over All for One, with support from pro-heroes and advanced students, a government representative explained. Midoriya's specific role will be minimized for security purposes. Understandable, Izuku acknowledged without protest. Public knowledge of time absorption capabilities could create unnecessary concern. All Might, still processing the day's events, turned to his student. "Young Midoriya, the power you absorbed from All for One, what happens to it now?" It's been converted to pure time energy, Izuku explained. Unlike All for One's crude accumulation of quirks, which maintain their original signatures and limitations, I've transformed the energy into a standardized time resource, essentially stored time that I can utilize for various applications. Applications such as? Nezu inquired, his intelligent eyes studying Izuku with scientific curiosity. Healing, primarily, Izuku replied. Time energy can be used to accelerate recovery, reverse damage, or even restore lost function under specific circumstances. A thoughtful silence followed this explanation, broken when Izuku turned to All Might with sudden decisiveness. Which brings me to an important point, he continued. All Might, would you permit me to attempt a more comprehensive restoration of your injury? The emaciated hero looked startled. My injury? But the damage from my battle with All for One years ago is permanent. Every doctor has confirmed that. Conventional medicine operates within standard time constraints, Izuku explained. With the energy I've absorbed, I could potentially reverse the time state of your injured organs to a point before the damage occurred, not temporarily as I did during the battle, but permanently. The implications hung heavily in the air. All Might had been operating with severely reduced capacity for years, his heroic form sustainable for increasingly limited periods. What Izuku proposed wasn't just healing, but restoration, a return to his prime condition. Is that even possible? All Might asked, hope and skepticism warring in his voice. Theoretically, yes, Izuku confirmed, though not without risk. The process would involve selective time reversal of your cellular structure while maintaining your consciousness and experience in the present time stream. It's complex but achievable with the resources now available to me. After considerable discussion about implications and potential complications, All Might agreed to the attempt. The procedure would take place in a secured medical facility with appropriate monitoring and emergency contingencies. 3 days later, with the nation still processing All for One's defeat and the subsequent revelation that All Might had been seriously injured for years, Izuku prepared for the restoration attempt. The facility had been equipped with specialized monitoring equipment designed by Yaoyorozu based on Izuku's specifications, capable of tracking time fluctuations during the process. All Might lay on a specialized treatment platform, his emaciated form a stark reminder of his years of sacrifice. Are you certain about this, young Midoriya? He asked as medical personnel completed their preparations. The risk is calculated and acceptable, Izuku assured him. I've analyzed the time signature of your injury thoroughly. The procedure has an 87.4% probability of complete success, with the remaining percentage representing partial restoration rather than negative outcomes. With final preparations complete, Izuku placed both hands directly over All Might's old wound, the catastrophic injury that had removed most of his respiratory system and severely damaged other internal organs. Chrono restoration, selective reversal. Golden light spread from Izuku's hands, penetrating All Might's body and illuminating the damaged tissues from within. Unlike standard healing, which accelerated natural recovery processes, this was true time manipulation, the selective reversal of cellular timelines to a state before injury while maintaining the surrounding structures in their current time position. The procedure was extraordinarily precise, requiring Izuku to simultaneously track thousands of distinct cellular timelines, reversing damage while preserving necessary adaptations and maintaining overall biological coherence. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he navigated the complex time landscape of All Might's injury. Fascinating adaptation patterns, Izuku murmured as he worked. Your body developed unique compensatory mechanisms to maintain function despite the damage. I'll preserve those enhancements while restoring the original structures. For nearly an hour, the golden light continued its work, gradually reconstructing All Might's damaged organs not through creation or accelerated healing, but through the literal reversal of time for those specific tissues. Monitors displayed the progress in real time, showing the steady restoration of lung capacity, circulatory efficiency, and organ function. When the process finally completed, Izuku stepped back, the golden light fading as he released the time field. It's done, he announced, his voice showing rare signs of fatigue. Complete restoration achieved with 98.3% structural fidelity. All Might took a deep breath, deeper than he had been able to in years, and felt the difference immediately. The constant pain that had been his companion since the original injury was gone, replaced by a sensation of wholeness he had thought lost forever. "This is," he began, struggling to find words adequate to the moment. "Your natural physical condition, restored to its state before the injury," Izuku explained. "The structural damage has been reversed, though your quirk remains unchanged. One for All still resides primarily with Togata now, as the transfer process was independent of your physical condition." All Might sat up slowly, marveling at the absence of pain and the ease of movement. "You've given me back years of my life, young Midoriya. I've merely restored what was taken prematurely," Izuku replied. "How you use that restored time is entirely your choice." In the days that followed, as All Might underwent testing to confirm the success of the procedure, and Japan began to process the implications of All for One's defeat, Izuku returned to UA with his classmates. The training camp, interrupted by the villain attack, had been officially concluded, but classes would resume with enhanced security measures. Upon their return, Izuku found himself approached by Yaoyorozu as they settled back into the dormitories. "The news reports aren't telling the whole story," she observed quietly, "about what happened with All for One." "An understandable omission," Izuku replied. "Some capabilities are better left to professional speculation rather than public knowledge." Yaoyorozu studied him with perceptive intensity. "You've changed since Kamino. Not visibly, but timely. Your signature has expanded." Izuku raised an eyebrow, genuinely impressed by her observation. "You can perceive time signatures now?" "Not exactly," she clarified. "But I've been studying the monitoring equipment we designed together. It's helped me recognize certain patterns associated with time fluctuation, and you're different." "A perceptive analysis," Izuku acknowledged. "Yes, the encounter with All for One resulted in significant time absorption. Essentially, the reclamation of stolen life force and energy accumulated over centuries. And you used some of that energy to heal All Might," she deduced. "The reports of his miraculous recovery started appearing yesterday." Izuku nodded. "Time energy can be redistributed for various purposes. Healing represents one of its most constructive applications." "What will you do with the rest?" she asked, her question direct but free from judgment or fear. The question gave Izuku pause, not because he hadn't considered it, but because few others had thought to ask about the responsibilities such power entailed, rather than just potential for destruction. "Research, primarily," he answered honestly. "The time signatures I absorbed contain valuable data about quirk manifestation and development across generations. Properly analyzed, this information could advance our understanding of quirk science by decades." Yaoyorozu's eyes lit with intellectual curiosity. "That's actually fascinating. The historical implications alone would be revolutionary." "Precisely," Izuku agreed, a genuine smile forming. "Knowledge is perhaps the most valuable resource that can be extracted from power." Their conversation continued late into the evening, shifting from theoretical applications of time energy to broader questions about quirk evolution and the future of hero society. Throughout, Izuku found himself increasingly appreciative of Yaoyorozu's analytical mind and thoughtful perspective, qualities that resonated with his own approach to understanding the world. As summer transitioned to fall and UA resumed its normal academic schedule, the events at Kamino gradually receded from immediate public attention. All Might, restored to physical health though still without his former quirk power, announced his retirement from active heroics and his transition to full-time teaching, a decision that allowed him to maintain his symbolic presence while acknowledging the changing landscape of hero society. For Izuku, the new semester brought fresh opportunities to explore the applications of his expanded time capabilities. With All for One neutralized and his accumulated power now converted to constructive potential, Izuku found himself increasingly drawn toward the academic and research aspects of heroics rather than combat alone. This shift in focus would ultimately set the stage for his evolution from merely a powerful student to something far more significant, a bridge between generations, a preserver of knowledge, and eventually, the teacher who would redefine what it meant to nurture heroic potential in a world still coming to terms with its own evolving nature. As autumn leaves drifted across UA's campus, Izuku found himself increasingly occupied with a new project, one that combined his expanded time capabilities with his inherent fascination for quirk analysis. Using a section of development studio space granted by Powerloader and Principal Nezu, he had established what he called a time archive, a systematic cataloging of quirk signatures extracted from his encounter with All for One. The process is rather like archaeological excavation, Izuku explained to Yaoyorozu, who had become his most frequent collaborator. Each time signature contains historical data about its original quirk, manifestation patterns, development trajectories, interaction frequencies. Yaoyorozu studied the holographic display she had created based on his specifications, which showed the time waveform of a strength enhancement quirk that had been active in the late Meiji era. It's like having a library of quirk evolution across Japanese history. Precisely, Izuku confirmed, adjusting a parameter to highlight specific resonance patterns. All for One unwittingly preserved these time records through his theft. By extracting and cataloging them, we gain unprecedented insight into how quirks have evolved over generations. Their research had already yielded several significant discoveries, including evidence that quirks had become generally more powerful but less stable over time, supporting the singularity theory proposed by Dr. Garaki decades earlier. More importantly, they had identified recurring patterns in how complementary quirks could enhance each other when properly synchronized. These findings could revolutionize hero team formations, Yaoyorozu observed as they reviewed their latest analysis. Matching heroes with timely complementary quirks would increase efficiency by at least 32% based on our models, and potentially reduce injury rates by a similar margin, Izuku added. Optimal quirk harmonization creates natural defensive synergies. As their research progressed, word of their work spread through UA's faculty. Increasingly, teachers began consulting them on questions of quirk optimization and training methodology. All Might, in particular, found their insights valuable for his teaching approach. Young Midoriya, Yaoyorozu, he greeted them one afternoon, entering their research space with uncharacteristic hesitation. "Might I request your expertise on a training question?" Izuku immediately recognized the time signature of concern in his mentor's demeanor. This relates to Togata's integration with One for All, doesn't it? All Might nodded, no longer surprised by Izuku's perceptiveness. Mirio is struggling with the power distribution. He has excellent control of his permeation quirk, but One for All's energy interferes with his phasing precision. A time desynchronization issue, Izuku diagnosed immediately. The energy transfer between quirks creates microsecond delays in activation patterns. Can it be corrected? All Might asked. With proper training, certainly, Izuku confirmed. I can develop exercises specifically designed to harmonize the time activation sequences between the quirks. The resulting training program, which Izuku designed and Yaoyorozu helped implement through specialized equipment, proved remarkably effective. Within weeks, Mirio Togata reported significantly improved control and reduced strain when using both aspects of his power simultaneously. This success led to further requests, and soon Izuku and Yaoyorozu found themselves conducting regular optimization sessions with third-year students preparing for professional debut. Their approach, combining Izuku's time analysis with Yaoyorozu's precise creation of training tools, created measurable improvements in quirk efficiency and control. "You two have essentially established an unofficial research department," Aizawa commented during one performance review. "Your methodologies are being incorporated into standard curriculum planning." "An unexpected but welcome application," Izuku acknowledged, "though I wonder if a more formalized structure might increase effectiveness." This casual observation eventually led to a meeting with Principal Nezu, who had been monitoring their progress with characteristic thoroughness. "Your time archive has significant implications beyond current applications," the intelligent animal noted as they discussed potential expansion. "What you're creating is essentially a historical record of quirk evolution that could inform future generations." "That's been our intent," Yaoyorozu confirmed, though we've focused primarily on practical applications for current students. "Perhaps it's time to think more broadly," Nezu suggested. "UA has been considering establishing a dedicated quirk research institute for some time. Your work could form the foundation of such an endeavor." The idea resonated deeply with Izuku, whose innate curiosity about quirks had been a defining characteristic since childhood, or more accurately, since Julius's fascination with magical abilities had transferred into his current life's interest in superpowers. A structured research environment would allow for more comprehensive analysis and application, Izuku agreed, particularly if combined with educational initiatives for developing heroes. The conversation continued for hours, expanding from immediate applications to long-term visions for how quirk research could shape hero education for generations to come. By its conclusion, the framework for UA's first quirk analysis and development department had been established, with Izuku and Yaoyorozu invited to continue their research as special student fellows while completing their hero training. As these professional developments unfolded, a parallel evolution was occurring in Izuku and Yaoyorozu's personal relationship. Their intellectual collaboration had gradually fostered deeper connection, their conversations extending beyond research to encompass broader philosophical questions and personal aspirations. Your approach to heroics has always differed from our classmates, Yaoyorozu observed one evening as they walked through UA's gardens after a late research session. Even from the beginning, you seem to view it through a different lens. My perspective is informed by additional context, Izuku acknowledged carefully. Though Yaoyorozu had never directly asked about the true nature of his abilities, her perceptiveness suggested she had developed her own theories. Context that predates your current existence, she ventured, watching his reaction closely. Izuku met her gaze steadily. You've deduced more than most. The time patterns in your speech sometimes shift when you discuss theoretical concepts, she explained, as if you're translating knowledge from another framework entirely. And occasionally, when you think no one is watching, your expressions reflect experience far beyond what would be possible in 16 years. Rather than deflect, Izuku made a decision. After ensuring they were truly alone, he created a small time field around them, not for dramatic effect, but to ensure privacy for what would follow. What I'm about to share is known to only a few government officials and select heroes, he began. My abilities aren't a quirk in the conventional sense. They're magic from another world, one I inhabited in a previous life. Instead of disbelief or confusion, Yaoyorozu's expression showed fascination and thoughtful consideration. That would explain numerous inconsistencies in your power manifestation patterns. Your abilities never followed standard quirk development trajectories. In my previous existence, I was Julius Novachrono, wizard king of a nation called the Clover Kingdom, Izuku continued. When I awakened to these memories at age 4, my magic awakened with me, though adapted to this world's physical laws. Over the next hour, Izuku shared the truth he had carried throughout his life at UA, his dual nature as both Izuku Midoriya and the reincarnated Julius Novachrono, his accumulated knowledge from another lifetime, and the responsibility he felt to use that knowledge constructively in this new existence. Yaoyorozu listened with remarkable composure, asking insightful questions that demonstrated her quick grasp of the implications. When he finished, her response was characteristically thoughtful. This explains why your approach to research always seemed to draw from principles beyond conventional quirk theory, she noted. You're viewing abilities through the lens of magical systems from an entirely different reality. The underlying principles have fascinating parallels, Izuku confirmed. Both magic and quirks represent manifestations of inherent potential shaped by biological and psychological factors. The expression differs, but the foundational concepts share remarkable similarities, and your time archive contains knowledge that bridges both understanding frameworks, Izuku completed her thought, which is why its implications extend beyond current quirk applications. As their conversation continued, Izuku felt a weight lifting, the relief of sharing his complete truth with someone who could truly comprehend its significance. Yaoyorozu's acceptance wasn't just emotional validation, but intellectual recognition, understanding that transformed his revelation from potential barrier to shared foundation. Thank you for trusting me with this, she said finally as they prepared to return to the dormitories. It can't have been an easy decision. On the contrary, Izuku replied with a genuine smile, it was perhaps the most natural decision I've made in this lifetime. The weeks that followed saw their collaboration deepen, both professionally and personally. Their research accelerated as Yaoyorozu's understanding of Izuku's true capabilities allowed for more direct application of magical principles to quirk analysis. Simultaneously, their personal connection evolved from intellectual respect to something more profound, a partnership built on complete understanding and shared purpose. By winter, their relationship had become the subject of gentle teasing among classmates, though both maintained professional focus during training and classes. What their peers couldn't fully appreciate was the depth of their connection. Not merely romantic attraction, but the resonance between complementary minds that recognized in each other the perfect intellectual counterpart. They're like two halves of some superbrain, Kaminari commented after watching them coordinate perfectly during a joint training exercise. It's like they don't even need to talk to know what the other is thinking. There was more truth to this observation than he realized. Izuku's time perception allowed him to anticipate Yaoyorozu's decisions, while her analytical processing had become so attuned to his patterns that she could predict his strategies with remarkable accuracy. In combat situations, this created a nearly unbeatable combination. In research, it produced innovations that continued to reshape UA's approach to quirk development. As their second year at UA progressed, Izuku and Yaoyorozu became increasingly involved in curriculum development alongside their own training. Their research findings were gradually incorporated into teaching methodologies, while their practical demonstrations provided fellow students with models for quirk optimization. "You've essentially become teaching assistants," Aizawa observed during one evaluation session. "Your influence on training protocols has been significant." "An unintended but welcome evolution," Izuku acknowledged, "though our primary focus remains completing our hero education." Aizawa's expression suggested skepticism about this latter claim. "Your career trajectory appears increasingly academic rather than field-oriented. Have you considered how that aligns with your hero license preparations?" It was a perceptive question that touched on a growing realization for Izuku. While he continued to excel in combat training and rescue operations, his genuine passion increasingly centered on quirk research, analysis, and education. The thrill he experienced when helping a student optimize their ability or discovering a new application for an existing quirk far exceeded the satisfaction of villain capture or disaster response. "I'm considering a specialized hero classification," Izuku admitted after thoughtful consideration. "Perhaps focused on quirk development and support rather than primary response." "There are precedents," Aizawa acknowledged. "Recovery Girl operates primarily as medical support. Nezu functions in administrative and strategic capacities. The definition of hero encompasses more than frontline combat." This conversation catalyzed serious reflection for both Izuku and Yaoyorozu about their professional futures. While they continued to participate fully in standard hero training, they also began exploring specialized pathways that would allow them to formalize their research and educational contributions. By the spring of their second year, they had developed a proposal for what they termed Quirk Integration Heroics, a specialized branch focusing on optimization, analysis, and development of quirk applications both for individual heroes and team formations. The proposal, presented to UA's administration, outlined a training and certification pathway that would create a new category of support-oriented heroes, specifically focused on quirk development. "This is remarkably comprehensive," Principal Nezu commented as he reviewed their submission, "and potentially revolutionary for how we conceptualize hero specialization. The current system emphasizes combat and rescue capabilities almost exclusively," Yaoyorozu explained. "While those remain essential, there's significant unrealized potential in dedicated quirk optimization specialists." The statistical models suggest a 27% increase in overall hero effectiveness if optimized team formations become standard practice, Izuku added, and a 43% reduction in quirk-related injuries during high-intensity operations. The proposal received provisional approval for development as a pilot program, with Izuku and Yaoyorozu invited to help design the curriculum while completing their own training. This formal recognition of their approach created a clear pathway for their professional evolution. one that would eventually reshape how hero agencies approached quirk development across Japan. As their academic and professional collaboration flourished, their personal relationship deepened with similar natural progression. By their final year at UA, they had become inseparable partners in research, in combat training, and in life planning. Their complementary natures created a harmony that those around them recognized as something extraordinary, a connection that transcended conventional romance to become true partnership in every sense. It surprised no one when, shortly before graduation, Izuku formally proposed. The moment itself was characteristically thoughtful, not a public spectacle, but an intimate conversation in their research laboratory after completing a particularly significant breakthrough in time quirk analysis. Our timelines have been converging since we met, Izuku observed as they reviewed their latest findings. Every significant decision has brought us into closer alignment. Yaoyorozu smiled, recognizing the shift in conversation. A time inevitability? Not inevitability, Izuku corrected gently. Perfect compatibility expressing itself through conscious choice, each decision made with complete awareness rather than predetermined outcome. From his pocket, he produced a ring unlike any conventional jewelry, a band of specialized material Yaoyorozu herself had created months earlier for an experiment in time resonance, now refined and enhanced through Izuku's time manipulation to create a perfect harmonic pattern visible as subtle golden light within the material. This represents our research, our partnership, and our shared future, Izuku said simply. Momo Yaoyorozu, would you continue this journey together as partners in all aspects of life? Her answer, like everything between them, was both emotional and logical. A yes that acknowledged both the rational perfection of their compatibility and the profound emotional connection that had grown alongside their intellectual partnership. Their wedding, held shortly after graduation, reflected their unique approach to life. Thoughtfully designed, meticulously organized, yet infused with genuine warmth and meaningful connections. Fellow graduates from Class 3A attended alongside faculty members who had become mentors and colleagues. All Might, fully restored to health, though still without his former power, served proudly as Izuku's best man. Young Midoriya, or perhaps I should say Professor Midoriya now, All Might said during the reception, referring to Izuku's recent appointment to UA's newly established quirk research faculty. You've charted a path I never could have envisioned when we first met. All paths contain unexpected divergences, Izuku replied with a smile, though some destinations remain constant despite the route taken. As they began their married life, Izuku and Momo established both a home and a joint professional practice. While maintaining their positions at UA, Izuku as founding professor of the Quirk Analysis Department, Momo as special instructor in advanced creation applications. They also established the Midoriya Yaoyorozu Quirk Integration Agency, a specialized hero support organization that provided optimization services to pro-heroes and agencies throughout Japan. Their approach revolutionized how many heroes trained and deployed their abilities. Teams that underwent their optimization protocols reported significant improvements in coordination, efficiency, and safety. Individual heroes discovered new applications for familiar quirks, often transforming mid-tier abilities into specialized tools of remarkable effectiveness. What they're doing isn't just support, it's transformation, Hawks commented after a consultation session that had dramatically improved his feather control precision. They don't just analyze your quirk, they help you understand it on a completely different level. This reputation spread rapidly throughout the hero community, making their services increasingly sought after. Yet despite growing demand, they maintained their primary commitment to education, believing that shaping the next generation of heroes would create more significant long-term impact than supporting current professionals alone. Our most important work happens in the classroom, Izuku would often remind colleagues who questioned their divided focus. Today's students become tomorrow's heroes, researchers, and teachers. The knowledge we share multiplies through their applications. This philosophy informed their approach to both teaching and research, creating an educational environment that emphasized understanding fundamental principles rather than merely mastering techniques. Students in their programs learned not just how to use quirks effectively, but why certain applications worked and how to innovate new approaches based on theoretical understanding. As years passed, the impact of their work became increasingly apparent. Graduates from their program established new standards for quirk application across various hero categories. Research from their department led to breakthroughs in quirk medicine, support equipment design, and team tactical formations. Their methodologies were gradually adopted by hero schools throughout Japan, then internationally as their reputation spread. Through it all, their partnership remained the foundation of their success. Two brilliant minds working in perfect harmony, each enhancing the other's strengths while compensating for limitations. Momo's creation abilities provided physical implementation for concepts Izuku developed through time analysis. His long-term perspective helped contextualize her innovations within broader historical patterns. They're not just partners, Nezu observed to Aizawa during one faculty evaluation. They're a self-reinforcing system, each making the other more effective than either could be independently. This synergy extended beyond their professional lives. When, 5 years after their marriage, they welcomed their first child, a daughter named Hana, with a fascinating quirk that combined time perception with limited creation abilities, their parenting reflected the same thoughtful coordination that characterized their work. Her quirk presents interesting theoretical questions, Izuku noted as they observed 3-year-old Hana creating small objects that appeared to phase between different time states. The interaction between your creation framework and my time manipulation has produced something entirely new. The genetic expression follows cascading resonance patterns rather than simple combination, Momo agreed, already documenting their observations for future research. Though I'm more interested in her cognitive development than quirk mechanics at this stage. A reasonable prioritization, Izuku acknowledged with a warm smile, though I maintain that understanding her quirk development will provide valuable insights for her education. Their family eventually grew to include a second child, a son named Takashi, whose quirk manifested as the ability to temporarily solidify time into physical constructs. Both children grew up in an environment that balanced rigorous intellectual development with emotional nurturing. Their parents' complementary approaches creating a foundation that encouraged both analytical thinking and interpersonal connection. Throughout these personal developments, Izuku and Momo continued to advance their professional work. Their quirk integration agency expanded to include specialized divisions for different hero categories, while their academic research produced increasingly sophisticated models of quirk evolution and optimization. By the time Izuku reached his mid-30s, he had been appointed UA's youngest dean of quirk studies, overseeing a department that had grown from their initial research project to become one of the Academy's most significant divisions. Yet despite his administrative responsibilities, Izuku never abandoned direct teaching. Each year, he personally instructed the introductory quirk analysis course for first-year students, approaching each new class with the same enthusiastic curiosity that had characterized Julius's approach to magical research. Every student represents a unique expression of quirk potential, he would explain to colleagues who questioned his continued classroom commitment. Each new quirk offers fresh insight into the fundamental nature of abilities themselves. This philosophy, that teaching was not merely transmission of established knowledge but ongoing discovery through new perspectives, became his defining characteristic as an educator. Students in his courses often remarked that Professor Midoriya seemed as excited to learn about their quirks as they were to learn from him, his genuine fascination creating an environment where exploration and innovation flourished. He doesn't just teach quirk theory. One student commented in a course evaluation, "He helps you discover aspects of your own quirk you never realized existed." This educational approach, combined with his ongoing research and periodic field consultations with active heroes, established Izuku as perhaps the world's foremost authority on quirk analysis and optimization. By his 40th birthday, his textbooks had become standard reference materials in hero schools worldwide, while his research papers transformed understanding of quirk development across multiple scientific disciplines. Throughout this remarkable career evolution, Izuku maintained the calm, scholarly demeanor that had characterized him since UA. his dual nature as both Izuku Midoriya and Julius Novachrono, creating a unique perspective that combined youthful idealism with ancient wisdom. Though his time powers remained formidable, further refined through decades of research and occasional field application, he increasingly found his greatest satisfaction in knowledge transmission rather than power demonstration. The most significant legacy isn't power itself, but understanding how to use it wisely, he often reminded his advanced students. Knowledge that enables others to reach their potential creates more lasting impact than individual achievement alone. This philosophy, which had guided his evolution from combat-oriented student to education-focused professional, ultimately defined his most important contribution to hero society. Not the villains he had defeated or the powers he had mastered, but the generations of heroes he had helped shape through his unique understanding of quirks and their application. And through it all, his partnership with Momo remained the central pillar of both his personal happiness and professional success. Two exceptional individuals whose combined potential had created something greater than either could have achieved alone. A legacy that would continue to shape hero society long after their individual contributions had entered historical record. On a crisp autumn morning, 30 years after the defeat of All for One, Izuku Midoriya stood before a new class of first-year students at UA. Though now in his late 40s, his appearance had changed remarkably little, a side effect of his time nature that had gradually become apparent as the years passed. While subtle lines at the corners of his eyes suggested maturity, his overall vitality remained unchanged, his time mastery unconsciously preserving his physical prime. "Welcome to Advanced Quirk Theory," he began, surveying the eager faces before him. "My name is Professor Midoriya, and I have the privilege of guiding your exploration of perhaps the most fascinating subject in modern heroics, the fundamental nature of quirks themselves." The classroom, a state-of-the-art facility in UA's Quirk Research Wing, a building that hadn't existed when Izuku himself was a student, hummed with anticipation. These weren't ordinary first years. They were specialized track students who had demonstrated exceptional analytical potential alongside their quirk capabilities. "Before we begin," Izuku continued, "I'd like to challenge a common misconception. Many of you likely view your quirks as fixed abilities, tools you've inherited that can be honed but not fundamentally altered. Today, we begin the process of reconceptualizing that understanding." With a subtle gesture, he activated the classroom's holographic system, a creation of his wife's design that could render quirk manifestations visible to all observers. Golden light briefly shimmered around his hand as he synchronized the technology with his time perception. "Quirks are not static entities," he explained as three-dimensional models of various ability types appeared throughout the room. "They are dynamic expressions of biological potential shaped by genetic, psychological, and time factors. Understanding these factors doesn't just improve your quirk application, it transforms your relationship with your own abilities." For the next hour, Izuku guided his students through fundamental principles of quirk theory, concepts he had developed over decades of research, teaching, and practical application. His lectures seamlessly integrated historical context, scientific principles, and practical demonstrations, his natural teaching ability making complex theories accessible without oversimplification. "Questions are encouraged," he reminded them as the session progressed. "In fact, thoughtful questions often advance understanding more effectively than prepared answers." When one student, a serious young woman with a molecular manipulation quirk, asked about the relationship between quirk evolution and user consciousness, Izuku's eyes lit with genuine pleasure. "An excellent inquiry that touches on one of our field's most fascinating frontiers," he acknowledged. "The evidence increasingly suggests that consciousness itself functions as a regulatory framework for quirk expression. Your awareness shapes your ability's manifestation in ways we're only beginning to fully comprehend." As the class concluded, students lingered to ask additional questions or schedule consultation appointments. This, too, was characteristic of Izuku's teaching style, creating an environment where curiosity was not merely permitted, but actively cultivated, where students felt empowered to pursue understanding beyond curriculum requirements. Later that afternoon, Izuku made his way to the Quirk Analysis Laboratory, where his wife was conducting research with their advanced doctoral students. The facility, a comprehensive quirk research center unmatched anywhere in the world, had evolved from their early work in the development studio 30 years earlier. The crystallization patterns are maintaining stability even under extreme pressure, Momo was explaining to a group of researchers as Izuku entered. Though now in her mid-40s, she retained the precise elegance that had characterized her since youth, her professional confidence having grown into genuine mastery of her field. Time anchoring at the molecular level? Izuku inquired, immediately grasping the nature of their experiment. Momo smiled in greeting. Yes, using the modified algorithm you developed last month. The results are promising. 97.8% stability retention across all test conditions. Their easy professional interchange reflected decades of collaborative research, a partnership that had produced some of the most significant advances in quirk science of the modern era. Though they maintained distinct specializations, Izuku in time quirk theory, Momo in materialization applications, their work remained fundamentally interconnected, each enhancing the other's research through complementary perspectives. Our daughter called, Momo mentioned as they reviewed the experimental data together. Hana's team has been invited to present at the International Quirk Symposium in Geneva next month. Well-deserved recognition, Izuku noted with paternal pride. Their daughter, now 25, had followed her parents into quirk research, though with a specialization in medical applications that represented her own unique interests rather than simple emulation of their path. Their son, Takashi, 3 years younger, had chosen a different direction, pursuing active hero work with a focus on disaster response and time stabilization. His quirk particularly effective for containing time-sensitivities. Though his career path differed from his parents' academic focus, he had incorporated their analytical approach into his hero methodology, establishing new standards for quirk application in emergency scenarios. Family dinner this weekend? Momo suggested as they completed their review of the current experiments. Both children confirmed they can attend. Perfect, Izuku agreed. I've been meaning to discuss Takashi's new containment techniques. His recent application in the Osaka earthquake response demonstrated fascinating adaptations of basic time principles. Their conversation was interrupted by a notification from Izuku's office, a priority message from the current principal of UA, their former classmate Ida Tenya, who had assumed leadership following Nezu's retirement 5 years earlier. Professor Midoriya, Professor Yaoyorozu, Ida's characteristically formal voice came through the communication system. Your presence is requested for an urgent consultation regarding a time anomaly detected near Musutafu. They exchanged glances, both recognizing the significance of such a request. Though Izuku occasionally consulted on unusual time phenomena, priority notifications were reserved for situations with potential public safety implications. We'll be there immediately, Izuku confirmed, already adjusting his schedule mentally. 20 minutes later, they sat in Ida's office alongside representatives from Japan's Quirk Regulation Commission and the Hero Public Safety Commission. The situation, as explained by the government officials, involved unusual time fluctuations detected around a previously dormant villain containment facility. The readings began approximately 36 hours ago, a commission scientist explained, displaying data that showed escalating disturbances in the time fields surrounding the location. They've increased in both frequency and intensity despite containment measures. Which facility? Izuku asked, though he had already deduced the answer from the time signature patterns displayed in the data. Tartarus Deep Containment Level, came the confirmation. Specifically, Cell Block TS1. Momo's expression sharpened, all for one's containment unit. Though officially designated by a numerical code, everyone present understood the significance. All for One had remained securely contained for 3 decades, his power neutralized by Izuku's time extraction, his physical form reduced to that of an extremely elderly man sustained by specialized life support. While still officially alive, he had been effectively neutralized as a threat to society. The time patterns suggest quirk regeneration, Izuku observed, studying the data more closely. Though the signature doesn't match his original configuration, it's more chaotic. Could he be recovering his abilities despite your intervention? Ida asked, concern evident in his usually controlled demeanor. Not in the conventional sense, Izuku replied thoughtfully. The extraction I performed was comprehensive. I absorbed the accumulated time energy from centuries of quirk acquisition. What these readings suggest is something different, almost like a reverberation effect. After further analysis and discussion, a consensus emerged. The containment facility should be inspected directly, with Izuku personally assessing the time anomaly. Though All for One had been neutralized as an active threat decades earlier, the potential for unexpected developments couldn't be dismissed, particularly given the unprecedented nature of both his original quirk accumulation and Izuku's subsequent time extraction. The following morning, a specialized team, including Izuku, Momo, and select government officials, arrived at the remote facility where Japan's most dangerous villains were contained. Deep below the visible prison complex lay a specialized containment level designed specifically for threats deemed beyond conventional incarceration parameters. Cell block TS-1, Time Stasis, Priority 1, had been constructed based on Izuku's specifications 30 years earlier, incorporating both physical security measures and time monitoring systems designed to detect any fluctuation in All for One's condition. Until now, those systems had reported only gradual decline as the ancient villain's natural lifespan progressed without his stolen life force to sustain him. The anomaly intensified overnight, the facility director reported as they proceeded through multiple security checkpoints. Time fluctuation has increased by approximately 17% since your initial consultation. Izuku nodded, already sensing the disturbance through his own time perception. The pattern suggests resonance amplification rather than spontaneous regeneration. Fascinating. When they finally reached the observation area outside All for One's cell, the monitoring displays confirmed what Izuku had already perceived: significant time distortion surrounding a physical form that appeared unchanged. Through reinforced observation panels, they could see the villain himself, now appearing as an impossibly ancient human, sustained by medical technology rather than stolen quirks, seemingly unconscious or at least unresponsive. Initial assessment? The commission representative prompted. The time signature suggests echo phenomena rather than active regeneration, Izuku explained, studying both the monitoring data and his own perceptions. It's as if the quirks I extracted 30 years ago left imprints in the surrounding time stream that are now producing resonance effects. Is there danger of actual quirk reactivation? Another official asked. Extremely unlikely, Izuku replied. The fundamental energy required for quirk activation was extracted and converted during my intervention. What we're observing is more like an afterimage in time. With careful consideration for security protocols, Izuku requested direct access to the containment cell for more precise analysis. After extensive discussion and additional safeguards, approval was granted for a limited examination under maximum security conditions. Inside the cell, the time distortion was immediately more apparent, subtle ripples in reality surrounding All for One's withered form. Izuku approached carefully, extending his time perception to analyze the phenomenon in greater detail. The pattern is remarkably complex, he noted aloud for the observation team's benefit. Multiple overlapping resonances creating the appearance of quirk activity without actual energy manifestation. As he studied the time echoes, Izuku detected something unexpected, a faint but distinct pattern suggesting consciousness despite All for One's apparently comatose state. With careful precision, he extended his time perception directly toward this anomaly. What he encountered wasn't the villain's active mind, but something more abstract, a time impression of consciousness preserved in the surrounding time stream, like a fossil preserved in sedimentary layers. Consciousness echo, Izuku identified, fascination evident in his voice despite the gravity of the situation. His mind left an imprint on the local time field, not active thought, but a record of past consciousness preserved through repeated quirk activation in this location. Is it aware? Came the concerned question from an observer. No more than a photograph is aware of being observed, Izuku clarified. It's an impression, not active consciousness, though the information contained within that impression is remarkably preserved. After further examination, Izuku determined that the time anomaly, while scientifically fascinating, presented no security risk. The resonance patterns had likely been triggered by some external stimulus, perhaps changes in the facility's power systems or environmental controls, causing dormant time imprints to temporarily manifest in detectable form. I recommend continued monitoring, but no additional containment measures, he concluded in his formal report. The phenomenon represents an interesting case study in long-term time imprinting, but poses no threat of quirk regeneration or consciousness transfer. Though the immediate concern was resolved, the incident prompted renewed interest in Izuku's original intervention against All for One. In the decades since that historic confrontation, new generations of heroes and researchers had learned about it primarily through academic case studies rather than first-hand accounts. The time anomaly created an opportunity for Izuku to provide more comprehensive documentation of both the original encounter and the subsequent containment methodology. In the weeks that followed, he worked with the Hero Public Safety Commission to create detailed records of the All for One case, not merely as historical documentation, but as a resource for future generations who might face similar threats. Though villain activity had evolved significantly in the 3 decades since All for One's defeat, the fundamental challenge of confronting power accumulation remained relevant to hero society. The most important lesson isn't in the specific techniques I employed, Izuku explained during one recording session, but in the underlying principle. Power itself is neither inherently constructive nor destructive. It's the knowledge guiding its application that determines impact. This perspective, that understanding was ultimately more significant than raw ability, had defined Izuku's approach throughout his career. While his time powers remained formidable, his most meaningful contributions had come through knowledge transmission rather than direct power application. As the All for One documentation project concluded, Izuku found himself reflecting on the long arc of his career, from his early days as UA's most powerful student to his current role as its most influential teacher. Though he had faced numerous challenges and confrontations over the decades, his defeat of All for One remained his most significant direct intervention, a moment when power had been necessary to preserve the future in which understanding could flourish. "You're contemplative today," Momo observed as they walked home through UA's campus one evening, the autumn leaves creating a tapestry of color around them. "Considering time patterns," Izuku acknowledged with a smile, "specifically how our current work connects to decisions made decades ago." "The All for One documentation?" "Partly," he confirmed, though more broadly, the relationship between power and knowledge across generations. The time extraction I performed 30 years ago was necessary in that moment, but the understanding derived from studying those extracted signatures has created far more significant long-term impact." Momo nodded, understanding the philosophical direction of his thoughts. Direct intervention versus educational legacy. Power versus understanding. "Precisely," Izuku agreed. In retrospect, the defeat of All for One seems less significant than the knowledge his quirk collection provided for future generations of heroes and researchers. This reflection characterized Izuku's evolving perspective on his own legacy. While the public might remember him primarily as the time wizard who had neutralized Japan's greatest villain, he increasingly measured his impact through his students. The thousands of heroes and researchers whose understanding of quirks had been transformed through his teaching, his children represented perhaps the most direct expression of this legacy. Hana had recently published groundbreaking research on time aspects of healing quirks, building on foundations her parents had established while developing entirely new applications. Takashi had integrated time theory into practical hero work, creating rescue protocols that had saved countless lives in disaster scenarios. Beyond his immediate family, Izuku's former students now occupied influential positions throughout hero society. Agency directors implementing optimization protocols he had developed, research leaders expanding theoretical frameworks he had established, and frontline heroes applying analytical approaches that transformed standard quirk application. Your true quirk wasn't time manipulation, All Might had observed during his retirement celebration years earlier. It was the ability to see potential where others saw only fixed limitations. This insight had proven increasingly accurate as Izuku's career progressed. His greatest gift wasn't his time power, formidable though it remained, but his ability to help others recognize and develop dimensions of their quirks they had never imagined possible. As he and Momo continued their evening walk, discussing research projects and family plans with the comfortable familiarity of decades-long partners, Izuku reflected on the dual nature that had shaped his existence. The reincarnated knowledge of Julius Novachrono had provided the foundation for his understanding of time mechanics, while Izuku Midoriya's inherent compassion and dedication had directed that knowledge toward constructive application. Neither identity had fully consumed the other. Rather, they had integrated over time to create something greater than either alone could have been. A unique perspective that combined ancient wisdom with present-day purpose, theoretical understanding with practical application. This integration represented perhaps the most personal aspect of Izuku's legacy. The demonstration that knowledge could transcend its origins to serve new contexts, that wisdom accumulated in one existence could find meaningful application in another. Just as he had helped countless students discover new dimensions of their quirks, he had discovered new dimensions of his own reincarnated existence. We should invite Takashi's team to present their time stabilization research at next month's departmental symposium, Momo suggested as they approached their home, a comfortable residence on the edge of UA's campus that balanced proximity to their work with privacy for their family life. An excellent idea, Izuku agreed. Their practical applications provide valuable context for our theoretical models. The integration of field experience with research data creates more comprehensive understanding for our students. This casual exchange exemplified their ongoing approach, constantly seeking connections between different knowledge domains, identifying opportunities to integrate diverse perspectives into more comprehensive understanding. After decades of partnership, their collaborative thinking had become so natural that distinctions between individual contributions often blurred into shared insight. As they entered their home, Izuku paused briefly at the threshold, his time perception momentarily extending beyond immediate surroundings to appreciate broader patterns. From this perspective, he could perceive not just physical reality, but the intricate web of connections his work had created throughout Hero Society. Former students now teaching their own students, research methodologies evolving through successive generations, optimization protocols adapting to new challenges while maintaining core principles. This was his true legacy. Not a single moment of power application against all for one, but the ever-expanding network of understanding that continued to grow long after specific interventions had entered historical record. While power might resolve immediate crises, knowledge created enduring foundations for addressing challenges not yet imagined. "Everything all right?" Momo asked, noting his momentary pause. Izuku smiled, returning his focus to the present moment. "More than all right. I was just appreciating time continuity, how patterns established decades ago continue to evolve in fascinating ways." "Speaking of evolution," she replied with a knowing smile, "I've been reviewing your proposal for restructuring the first-year curriculum. Your integration of historical context with practical application creates an excellent foundation for students to develop both technical skill and philosophical understanding." Their conversation continued into the evening, seamlessly transitioning between professional collaboration, family matters, and theoretical exploration. The boundaries between work and life long since dissolved into a harmonious whole that reflected their integrated approach to existence itself. Later that night, as Momo slept beside him, Izuku found himself reflecting once more on the long arc of his dual existence. Julius Novachrono's fascination with magical abilities had found perfect expression in Izuku Midoriya's world of quirks, a context that offered endless variation for study and understanding. What might have remained academic curiosity in the Clover Kingdom had become transformative educational methodology in modern Japan. "Time reveals all truths," he murmured, an old saying from his previous life that had proven increasingly meaningful in this one. The truth revealed by his decades in this world was both simple and profound. Power's greatest value lay not in its direct application, but in the understanding it enabled. Understanding that could be shared across generations, creating foundations for growth beyond any individual's direct influence. This perspective would continue to guide him through the decades ahead, teaching new generations of students, developing increasingly sophisticated models of quirk theory, and occasionally intervening directly when time threats required his specific capabilities. Through it all, his fundamental approach would remain consistent: knowledge before power, understanding before application, wisdom guiding ability rather than ability defining purpose. And in this consistency lay perhaps the most significant aspect of his legacy, not merely what he had accomplished in either of his existences, but how he had integrated knowledge across lifetimes to serve a purpose greater than individual achievement. In transcending the limitations of single lifetime perspective, he had helped create a framework for quirk understanding that would continue evolving long after his direct contribution had ended. This was the true power of time, not merely its manipulation through magical or quirk-based means, but the recognition of how knowledge accumulated across time spans could transform understanding in ways no single moment of power application could match. In this recognition lay both Izuku's greatest wisdom and his most enduring contribution to the world he had helped shape. As dawn approached, he closed his eyes and allowed himself to rest, secure in the knowledge that the time patterns he had established would continue unfolding through his students, his children, and the countless heroes whose understanding of their own quirks had been transformed through his teaching. In this continuation lay a form of immortality more meaningful than any physical longevity: the persistence of understanding across generations, creating foundations for growth beyond any individual's direct experience. And in that understanding, the reincarnated Wizard King found his most perfect expression, not as a wielder of overwhelming power, but as a teacher whose wisdom transcended the boundaries of individual existence to create endless possibility for those who followed.
Much love to the legends who keep this community alive. Every single one of you is powering the journey, and it means the world. Let's get into the shout-out. For our pro hero tier, holding strong on the front lines, we've got Javon McGuire. For our symbol of peace tier, the unstoppable squad repping hard, Greg Green, Justin Pontanel, Nicholas Barnes, Joshua Hetherington, Aaron Abercrombie, Drift SK Ader, Ekeno Himejima, Corey Tokars, Yan, X0 Hope 3656, Devin Black, Rowdy Rich, Bionatarius V, King of the Pirates, Crow, Daniel Sharp, Roberto Ramos D. Cristina, Dasher Games, Joe Bros, Aiden Schmidt, Mason Edwards, Ray Vaughn Crimson River, Dante Allister, Fable, Adam Yonkers, Blood Saints, Omar Cousin, Donna Cafe, Zeph, Assassin 24, Howie 60, Ignatius, Albert, Carlos Terry, Raphael Tehran, Kevin Hall. And for our Hope of the Universe tier, standing tall as the ultimate champions, James, Quanyan Thompson, Big Fro Pro, Juan, I'm Caliver, Colsey. To all of you, massive respect and gratitude. You are the reason we keep leveling up.
And that's how Izuku Midoriya completely dominated the hero world with his incredible time manipulation powers as Julius Novachrono's reincarnation. If you enjoyed this epic transformation story, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe for more amazing what-if scenarios, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our legendary hero content. More mind-blowing stories are coming your way soon.